Hello guys, welcome to Anafictionif. Support the author Heavenly Mother Draconic Father, Orengeflame. What if Issei dated Asia Argento harem? Let's begin. Chapter 1 The Girl Who Saw the Throne, Italy. The bell of a cathedral tolled faintly, echoing like a prayer through the cavernous hall. Dusty shafts of late afternoon sunlight poured through stained glass, bathing the pews in mosaics of ruby and sapphire light. Candle flames quivered in the faint draft creeping under the massive oak doors. Though it was one of the Vatican's lesser cathedrals, its vaulted ceilings still whispered of old power and older faith, a sanctum rarely visited by anyone but the most devout. Asia Argento knelt near the altar rail, finishing her routine prayers. The silver cross hanging from her neck glimmered in the dim light. Her long blonde hair was tucked neatly beneath the soft folds of her white and blue veil. She rose and walked outside the cathedral, intending to see and heal more injured when a rough sound cut through the silence. A faint scrape. A muffled breath. Asia's green eyes darted toward the source. There, slumped against the shadowed base of a tree, lay a young man. His golden hair, matted with sweat. His expensive clothes, silk and velvet, torn and stained, clung to a frame far too pale. Across his chest gaped a deep wound, dark and wet. Her breath caught. Oh my! Without thinking, she rushed to him, kneeling on the cold ground. The scent of iron filled her nostrils, sharp and metallic. Her hands trembled as she brushed his hair from his fevered forehead. You're hurt, please stay still. I'll heal you. She pressed her palms over the wound, and the cross at her throat warmed as she invoked her sacred gear. A soft green glow enveloped her hands, twilight healing, the gift she'd been blessed with. It pulsed gently, spreading like ripples over water, seeping into the stranger's body. She wondered how someone was able to get injured here of all places. But as the light flowed from her, something else flowed back. Memories. Not hers, or at least not yet. They came like echoes, overlapping, dissonant and clear all at once. Will you become my friend? As in front of her was a brown-haired boy's earnest, honest eyes met hers. I was happy that I finally had a friend even for a short while. If I were to be born again, will you become my friend once more? Her heart lurched as she saw the despair and sadness coming from the boy as he failed to save her. She wished she could erase his tears. Can I stay with you forever from now on? She gasped softly, blinking, her healing aura flickering. In her mind, faces blurred and places she never visited appeared, from his home, the occult research club, co-academy, familiar hallways, gentle smiles. Issei. The name surfaced like a prayer on her lips, unspoken yet luminous. I'm glad I came to this country. I met with Issei. She felt tears her eyes as the visions continued unbidden. Images of their friends, Buchuzan, Akena-san, Zenoviazan, each face like a stained glass window lit from behind. Her voice trembled inwardly. Lord, please allow me to be with Issei forever. Let me stay next to him forever. And please listen to one of my wishes. I love him so much. The scene shifted in her mind. Another life. Another thread of possibility. A ring slipped onto her finger. White dress, church bells. She and Issei married beneath a sky full of spring blossoms. Issei, I love you. I will always stay beside you. Then a different memory, warm arms around her, a soft infant's coo. A baby girl with his eyes in her hair. Nights of closeness, laughter, various battles and whispered prayers turning to quiet moans of passion. All of it was precious. Asia's breast shuddered. Who are you? She whispered to the injured man, though her heart was elsewhere, years and lifetimes away. The visions weren't stopping. They multiplied and tangled threads of memory and emotion stretching beyond her comprehension. Another image surfaced, a cruel smile, a noble crest shaped like a twisting spiral of darkness, and her own tear-streaked face cast in torchlight. Voices shouted, witch! Traitor! Devil's whore! Asia gasped, jerking back as the healing light flickered violently. Her pupils widened, trembling as the man's name echoed through her mind like a curse. Diodora Astaroth. Her breath hitched. No, it can't be. But the memories came faster, scenes from futures that hadn't yet happened. Diodora's honeyed words, his feigned kindness as he knelt before her, pretending to be grateful for her healing. His manipulations. his laughter as the church turned on her. His deliberate plan to use her purity against her. Asia's lips parted in horror as realization took root. This man wants me to heal him, a devil, so they could brand me a heretic. Her heart constricted painfully in her chest. This is the moment, the day I lose everything. The green aura of twilight healing faltered, sputtering as she drew her hands away from his half-mended wound. Diodora stirred, his golden eyes fluttering open. Even in his weakened state, his smirk was faint but unmistakable, like a serpent pleased with its snare. Asia Argento, he rasped, voice smooth as poison. Truly a holy maiden among sinners. Asia stumbled backward, clutching her chest, the cross on her necklace suddenly cold. You were never hurt by accident, were you? He laughed softly, the sound hollow and cruel. Accident? Oh no, my dear saint. This wound was necessary. You see, rumors spread so easily about a holy maiden with such tenderness that I just had to see. Her stomach churned. Before she could answer, a gasp tore through the quiet air behind her. Asia! She spun around to see 3 priests standing at the edge of the path, the senior brothers from her cathedral. Their faces were masks of disbelief, eyes wide with fury and disgust. Father John dropped his Bible and Father Abraham raised his cross as if warding off evil. By the Lord! You're healing a devil! Father Maxwell shouted, his voice shaking with both anger and fear. It was then that Diodora used a teleportation spell and quickly disappeared from view, causing greater anger to the 3 priests that they couldn't kill the foul creature. Asia Argento! Father John shouted with thunder, stepping forward. Do you understand what you've done? This man bears the mark of evil. And you dare use your gifts of the holy light to save him? Asia froze, her throat tightening. But her words failed her. She wanted to explain, to say she didn't know, that she had seen visions of truth too late, but now knew no one would listen. Too didn't mean. Silence. Father Abraham's voice cracked like a whip. Your so-called miracle is blasphemy. You have consorted with the enemy. You've desecrated the gift the Lord gave you. Asia's tears spilled freely, the weight of their condemnation crushing her heart. But beneath the pain was a strange calm, the knowledge that this moment was always meant to happen. So this is it, the day I'm excommunicated. Her fingers tightened around her satchel. But I can't stay. Not when I know Issei is waiting for me somewhere. Not when I've seen what comes next. She turned and ran. The priest's shouts followed her through the garden, echoing against the cathedral walls. Stop her! Bring her before the bishop! Asia didn't look back. She sprinted toward the dormitory, her boots pounding against the cobblestones, her tears falling freely. She could already imagine the gates closing behind her forever. Inside the sisters' quarters, Asia burst into her small room, the wooden door slamming behind her with a dull thud. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. The room was small, barely enough space for a narrow bed, a modest desk, and a single wardrobe. The window curtains fluttered softly in the late afternoon breeze, the dying light spilling across the floor in streaks of crimson and gold. It was quiet, almost painfully so. Asia's trembling hands went straight to her bedside drawer, pulling it open with a sharp scrape. She began to pack whatever she could fit into her worn brown satchel, her rosary, her Bible, and a handful of small keepsakes given by the few nuns who had treated her kindly. A ribbon from Sister Maria. A small wooden angel carved by one of the children she once healed. Each item felt heavier than it should have, as if carrying the weight of every memory tied to it. Her fingers hesitated over the rosary, the familiar beads cold against her skin. My lord, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. I truly am. Tears welled in her green eyes, blurring her vision. But I have to find him. Issei, I'll find you. I don't know how, but I will. She slung the satchel over her shoulder, her hands shaking as she tied the strap. The cross around her neck swung forward, glinting in the fading light, and for a moment it seemed to accuse her. Far from the marble towers of the Vatican, deep within the lands of the underworld, a castle loomed beneath a violet sky. Its towers were black as obsidian, wreathed in a faint green mist that shimmered like dying embers. The banners of the Astaroth clan hung motionless, catching neither wind nor light. The air here was heavy, thick with the faint scent of sulfur. Within its halls, lit by fire, Diodora Astaroth sat slouched upon a dark throne of black marble. He wore his usual ornate robes, though the left side was torn and stained where Asia's healing light had once touched him. The faint scar across his chest pulsed under the fabric, a mark left half-healed, half-burned. He stared at it with a detached amusement, fingers brushing lightly over the wound. The faint green energy from her twilight healing still lingered beneath his skin, making his demonic aura ripple unevenly. "She's running away," he muttered, voice low and smooth, a smirk tugging at his lips. Before him, several glowing orbs hovered in the air. Various familiars were seen flying through Rome, their spectral wings beating faintly as they projected scenes from afar. Through their flickering images, Diodora watched the chaos unfolding at the cathedral, priests shouting, bells tolling, Asia's desperate escape through the gardens. He chuckled softly, the sound echoing through the vast, empty chamber. Ah, what a divine irony! The holy maiden branded a witch. A little nudge here and there, and the church does all the work for me. His tone was filled with honeyed malice. He leaned forward on the throne, resting his chin on one hand as he watched the vision fade. The last image was Asia running down a cobblestone street. The sun painting her silhouette in red lingered longer than the others. "Foolish little saint," he murmured, his golden eyes gleaming. "You were supposed to heal me completely. But you couldn't even finish that much, could you?" But then he laughed again, slower this time, darker. "Still, I suppose this works just as well." Rising from the throne, Diodora brushed the dust from his robes, his movements graceful but deliberate. He stood tall, the torchlight catching the sharp angles of his face, the cruel smile, the aristocratic calm. The wound in his chest throbbed faintly, yet he smiled as though it were a cherished reminder. "She'll be hunted by her own kind," he said softly, pacing toward the window overlooking the violet plains of the underworld. "Branded a traitor. Feared by those she once called family. And when she's cast out, broken, alone," he tilted his head back, closing his eyes with delight. "She'll have no one left to turn to but me." His grin widened into something serpentine. "She will hate me," he whispered to himself. "She'll curse me, scream my name, but she will remember me. Every time she prays and no one answers, she'll think of the devil she once saved." It was then that one of his maid peerage member entered with worry. "Master Diodora, your injuries." He silenced her with a flick of his fingers, green energy crackling around his hand. "I rather keep it. Her light is exquisite, it burns like sin itself." He looked down at his half-healed chest again, tracing the edge of the scar with something almost reverent. "I can still feel her light inside me, pure, radiant, untamed. That kind of innocence can't be taught. Only corrupted." He turned his gaze toward the distant image of Rome displayed in one of the familiars. "Run, Asia Argento. Run as far as you can," he said, his voice echoing through the throne room, smooth and cruel. "The next time we meet," he paused, his eyes glowing gold with infernal flame, "I'll make sure the world remembers you not as a saint, but as this devil's bride." A slow, deliberate smile curled across his face, his laughter filling the empty hall, growing louder, richer, reverberating through the walls until even the maids trembled. The sun had already begun to sink beneath the Roman skyline when Asia Argento fled the cathedral grounds. Her legs ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't dare slow down. The echo of bells and the priest's angry shouts still rang in her ears like ghosts of judgment. Her heart pounded as she darted through narrow streets, passing bewildered pedestrians and merchants closing their stalls for the evening. The scent of baked bread, smoke, and distant incense mixed in the air. "I have to keep running, I can't stop now. If they catch me, everything might end here." But even as she ran, a strange pressure tugged at her thoughts. The memories from before, the future memories were guiding her like threads of light in the dark. She turned down an alley, ducking behind a car just as two armed exorcists sprinted past, their robes marked with the seal of the Vatican. "Spread out. The heretic cannot leave the city. If she resists, subdue her," one barked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Asia covered her mouth, holding her breath as they passed. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. She waited until their footsteps faded, then cautiously peered out. And then another flash. Her surroundings shifted before her eyes, a dizzying ripple in time. For a moment, she saw herself standing in the same alley, captured, bound by chains of light as the exorcists dragged her away. The image vanished as quickly as it came. She stumbled back, gasping. That was supposed to happen, she whispered. But it didn't. It quickly dawned on her, the memories weren't only visions of what was, but what could be. If she followed them carefully, she could change her fate. The thought filled her with fragile hope. Hours passed. The streets grew darker as night wrapped around the city like a shroud. Asia's steps slowed, exhaustion gnawed at her. She had run across nearly a third of Rome, taking back streets and weaving through old plazas. Her stomach growled painfully, she hadn't eaten since morning. She found herself slumped against a cold brick wall in a narrow alley, the dim light of a street lamp flickering above. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her satchel. I can't keep running forever, I have to find a way out of Italy. Her mind flashed to Issei, his smile, his kindness, his warmth. She whispered his name softly, as though it were a prayer. Issei, please wait for me, I'll come to you somehow. Tears welled in her eyes as she pressed her hands together in prayer. My Lord, please send me a sign, help me find a way. But the moment she uttered those words, a chill ran down her spine. From the new memories that had awakened within her, a terrible truth surfaced, one that froze her prayer on her lips. The biblical God is dead. The words echoed hollowly in her mind. Her hands fell to her lap, trembling. Then what was she praying to all this time? Who had guided her? Who had forgiven her sins? The despair struck deep, coiling inside her chest like an empty void. For a moment, the world seemed darker, the stars dimmer. Then no one is listening? She whispered, her voice breaking. She shook her head violently, wiping her tears. No, even if the Lord is gone, I can't give up. Issei, he's still out there. If he could forgive me, that's enough. But then, pop! A small, strange sound broke the stillness. Asia blinked and looked up just in time to see something float down in front of her, something small, round, and glowing faintly white. Then another appeared. And another. 3 tiny puffballs hovered in the air, each with little angelic wings like cherubs and tiny golden halos floating over their heads. Their eyes were bright and innocent, their bodies soft and round, resembling living cotton clouds. Asia's jaw dropped. Ah! The little creatures flitted around her curiously, their wings fluttering with a soft fiofua sound. One tilted its head and squeaked pie before booping her cheek. Asia's tension melted instantly. You're so cute. She reached out slowly, afraid they might vanish if she moved too fast. But instead, one landed gently on her palm, nuzzling against her thumb like a kitten. I don't understand, she murmured, her green eyes wide with wonder. What are you little ones? Are you angels? The puffballs chirped again, spinning in the air like tiny stars. Their angelic wings gave off a faint, divine glow, not like any light she had ever seen. It was soft, warm, comforting. For the first time since fleeing the cathedral, Asia smiled through her tears. Did you come to help me? The puffballs bobbed up and down enthusiastically, their little halos twinkling. Asia clasped her hands together, whispering a shaky laugh. Thank you so much. I thought I was alone. Her exhaustion lingered, but the ache in her heart lessened. Surrounded by the 3 floating beings, the cold Italian night didn't seem quite as lonely anymore. One of the puffballs tugged gently at her sleeve, then pointed its tiny wing toward the east, toward the rising moon. Asia blinked. Do you think I should go that way? She didn't know why, but something told her to follow. Maybe it was divine intervention. Maybe it was fate. Either way, she stood up, clutching her satchel and whispering softly to herself. Then to Japan. And with the little angelic puffballs lighting her path, Asia continued running into the night streets of Rome. The streets of Rome were quiet now, bathed in the silvery hue of the moon. The once golden domes were now shades of blue and gray, and the cobblestones reflected faint glimmers of lamplight. Asia Argento walked carefully along the narrow streets, her small hands clutching the strap of her satchel while the 3 fluffy cherubs floated beside her. Their tiny halos glowed softly, casting a faint warmth on the old walls around them. She couldn't stop glancing at them, full of curiosity, fascination, and confusion all at once. Where did you come from? She whispered softly, her voice almost lost in the night air. I've never seen anything like you before. The three puffballs chirped at her, soft little pie. Noises that made her heart melt. One twirled in the air, another bounced on invisible wind currents, and the third tugged gently at her cloak like a child seeking attention. Asia smiled, though her mind was racing. From all the memories I saw, neither I nor my other selves ever had anything like this happen before. Not once. Not even after meeting Issei again. So what are you? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp growl. She froze. It wasn't a monster, instead it was her stomach. The sound echoed embarrassingly loud in the quiet street. Asia blushed and pressed her hands against her stomach. Oh no, not now, she murmured with an embarrassed laugh. I haven't eaten since this morning. The puffballs stopped midair and turned toward her, their round eyes blinking curiously. I'll be fine, she said quickly, smiling despite her hunger. You don't need to worry. I just need to find somewhere safe to rest and... But before she could finish, the three cherubs suddenly floated upward. Their halos flared brightly, and with three soft pops, they vanished in little bursts of light. Eh? Asia gasped, spinning around in alarm. Wait! Where are you going? Please come back! Her voice echoed down the empty street, but there was no reply. Only silence. The panic set in fast. Her heart clenched. Did they leave me? Did I scare them away? She clasped her hands together, whispering softly, Please come back, I didn't mean to. Then, without warning, another pop filled the air and followed by two more. Asia blinked, startled, as the three puffballs reappeared right in front of her. But this time, they weren't alone. Floating around them in a lazy orbit were several warm, freshly baked loaves of bread, ciabatta, focaccia, even a few croissants, all steaming and golden, as if just pulled from an oven. The scent hit her instantly, soft, buttery, and intoxicating. Ah, food, she breathed, eyes wide. The cherubs chirped proudly, circling her with cheerful little squeals as the loaves hovered within reach. Asia clasped her hands over her mouth in disbelief. You brought these for me? The puffballs nodded happily, bouncing in midair. Her hunger overwhelmed her hesitation. Thank you so much. She grabbed one of the loaves and tore into it eagerly, her eyes bright with relief. The bread was still warm and crisp on the outside, soft inside, and just a little salty. Mmm. She made a delighted noise, quickly finishing it and grabbing another. It's delicious. For the first time in what felt like forever, she laughed. The sound was small but pure, the laugh of a girl who almost had forgotten what joy felt like. But then, from somewhere down the street, a man's voice bellowed in outrage. N000. Who took my bread? Asia froze mid-bite, her cheeks puffed full of food. Across the quiet plaza, a baker stood in front of his shop, waving his rolling pin like a weapon and glaring at the sky. I swear it just vanished. Saints above, thieves now steal with magic? Asia's heart dropped into her stomach. Slowly, she turned her wide eyes toward the cherubs. You three didn't, she whispered. The puffballs floated innocently, tilting their little heads. Asia pointed toward the bakery. Did you take that bread from there? One of the cherubs blinked twice, then nodded proudly, as if expecting praise. Asia gasped, pressing her hands to her cheeks. Oh no! You can't just take food without asking. The puffballs looked confused, their halos dimming slightly. She sighed, lowering her voice gently. I know you meant well, and I'm so thankful you wanted to help me. But stealing, even if it's for someone else, it's wrong. The three little angels drooped instantly, their wings hanging low as soft pie sounds escaped them. Their light dimmed to a pale blue, the glow of guilt. Asia's heart ached at the sight. Oh, please don't be sad, she said softly, kneeling so they could see her face. I'm not angry. I just want you to understand. We can't take what isn't ours. We have to make things right, okay? The puffballs looked up at her again, blinking. After a long pause, they chirped softly and understanding. Asia smiled, her expression warm and forgiving. Good. Then let's return the bread, all right? The cherubs twirled in unison, their halos glowing bright gold again. In an instant, the remaining loaves floated up from Asia's arms, encircled by tiny rings of light, and with a soft flash, they vanished. Far across the street, the baker gasped in shock as every missing loaf suddenly reappeared neatly on his counter, still steaming hot. He blinked, scratching his head. Was it angels? Back in the alley, Asia giggled softly, clasping her hands together. There. Much better. The cherubs floated around her again, this time chirping apologetically. One nuzzled her cheek in a silent plea for forgiveness. Asia smiled and gently patted its round little head. It's all right. I forgive you. Thank you for caring about me. She leaned back against the cool stone wall of the alley, gazing up at the moonlight filtering through the clouds. The warmth of the bread still lingered on her tongue, and for a moment she felt safe. Even if the world had turned its back on her. Even if she was alone. These three little beings, whatever they were, made her feel watched over and protected. Her eyes softened. Maybe God is still watching after all. The cherubs chirped softly, their halos shimmering as they settled around her like glowing fireflies. Seventh heaven. High above all mortal skies, beyond the light of stars and the veil of mortal world, there existed a realm untouched by sin, the seventh heaven, the innermost sanctum of divinity. It was a place where the air shimmered with golden radiance, where the light itself sang hymns of eternal praise. The vast expanse of the holy kingdom stretched endlessly, its crystalline architecture glimmering like carved starlight. Floating scripture inscribed with divine energy weaved across the skies, forming patterns that dictated the will of heaven itself. At its very center stood a colossal sphere of radiant white, the core of the sacred gear system, humming softly in harmony with its counterpart, the God system, the great mechanism that governed the angels, souls, and miracles. Together, they had once obeyed only the will of the biblical God. Now inside the celestial chamber, the archangel Michael, the current leader of heaven, stood before the two systems, his brow furrowed in deep concern. Streams of pure light cascaded from the twin orbs, fracturing into unstable flares that lashed out like living lightning. Holy runes flickered erratically across the marble floor, and the usually serene hum of heaven's heart had turned into a discordant roar. Michael's robes fluttered in the surging energy, his golden wings unfurled to shield himself from the volatile light. His voice rang with authority as he stretched out his hand, trying to calm the chaos. Command override Michael, Seraph class designation. Reinitialize both systems under my authority. In the name of the Lord who is gone, heed the order of his successor. But the only response was a deep tremor. The divine machinery that had once been the heartbeat of his father's greatest creation now screamed in defiance. Lines of holy code unraveled midair, shattering into fragments of light that scattered like broken glass. Michael winced as the feedback hit him, an immense pressure against his soul. He staggered slightly, his normally calm expression cracking into alarm. This shouldn't be happening. He moved quickly, wings spreading wider as he called upon layers of ancient protocols written before his birth. Seventh heaven emergency lockdown. All lower gates, seal yourselves. Do not let the contamination spread. Across the expanse, thousands of angelic seals ignited, but one by one they faltered and died. Michael's breath caught in his throat. His hands hovered over the swirling streams of divine code. The sacred gear system, the mechanism that controlled the holy relics bestowed upon humans, was pulsing wildly, shifting between frequencies it shouldn't have been capable of. Why won't you listen to me? He whispered. Why are both trying to reject me? He reached toward the sacred gear core, trying once more to steady it, but his hand passed through the light, and for the first time in centuries, he felt resistance. The system pushed him back. The light flared violently, and with a sound like 1,000 shattering trumpets, the God system and the sacred gear system both surged in unison. The floor beneath him cracked with veins of holy light. Michael gasped, stepping back, eyes widening as runic symbols flashed around him. They weren't from his command language. These were foreign. The glowing glyphs rearranged themselves in the air, forming a message only he could read. Access denied. User unrecognized. Heavenly core resetting authority. Michael's golden eyes widened in horror. Resetting? That's impossible. There's no higher authority. But before he could finish, a radiant pulse exploded outward. The chamber's walls warped, light twisting into spirals of chaos. The weight of heaven itself pressed down upon him. He felt the system sever his connection, not just to the mechanisms, but to the very essence of heaven's governance. Then came the blinding flash. No! In an instant, the archangel was engulfed by light. His wings spread in desperation, feathers scattering like molten gold. The next moment, the blinding brilliance collapsed inward and Michael was gone. Sixth heaven Zeeble. He fell from the skies like a fallen comet, his wings dimmed and his robes torn. The serene glow that once marked his divinity flickered unsteadily as he reappeared in the lower heavens. The gates above him, those that led to the seventh heaven, were sealed tight, glimmering with barriers he could no longer open. He tried again and again to force entry, his palms pressed against the divine barrier. Open! This is Michael, seraph of the highest order. Authorize access. But no matter how much power he poured into the command, the gates remained silent. He was locked out. The realization hit him like divine thunder. The systems have rejected me, the systems themselves has cast me out. Michael stood there, surrounded by trembling angels who dared not approach, their eyes wide with fear. The very air around him was unstable, the heavenly light flickering like a dying candle. One of the lower seraphs hesitantly called out, "Lord Michael, what has happened?" The sacred gear signals are fluctuating across the realms. We're detecting multiple surges, one in Japan, another near the dimensional boundary. Michael didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the sealed gates above. The normally serene archangel now looked shaken, almost human in his disbelief. "Father, what is happening?" he thought, gripping his trembling hand against his chest. "Is this your will? Or has something else awakened?" Above the silent heavens, the twin systems pulsed in eerie harmony, their light twisting into colors never seen before. Somewhere deep within the God network, a new thread of fate had been woven. And in that instant, for the first time since the death of God, heaven itself began to change. Sixth heaven Zeeble. The once serene expanse of the sixth heaven, the domain of order, command, and the choirs of the seraphim, now pulsed with chaotic light. Choirs of lesser angels flew hurriedly across the vast halls, their radiant wings blurring into trails of light. In the center of the hall stood Michael, wings unfurled and eyes tense with resolve. He was surrounded by a dozen of his fellow brothers and sisters, all waiting on his command, their faces grim. The lingering shock from being locked out of the seventh heaven still haunted him, but there was no time to dwell on it. He raised his hand, his voice booming with divine authority. "Listen to me, all of you. This is not a test. This is not a drill." Every angel in the hall froze. The air itself seemed to still be under the weight of his voice. Michael's tone hardened, his words carrying the force of a heavenly decree. "All angelic detachments are to return immediately. I want all active missions on Earth and across the realms terminated. No exceptions. Recall everyone, especially the archangels. Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, all must return to heaven now." The command rippled outward. Angels saluted with reverent cries of, "As you command, Lord Michael," before vanishing in pillars of holy light, spreading across the skies like a storm of stars. Others darted toward the massive communication orbs hovering above the command platform, relaying his orders across the celestial network. The choir of bells that marked heaven's calm was now replaced with the deep, resonant clang of the trumpet of summoning, a sound not heard since the Great War. Even Michael himself felt a chill run down his spine as the echoes rang through the heavens. He turned to one of the remaining seraphs, a young, golden-haired messenger angel named Anael, who hovered nearby, her wings trembling slightly. "Seal all dimensional channels to Earth," he commanded. "Until further notice, heaven must cut all direct interference. I will not risk the contamination spreading beyond our borders." Anael's eyes widened in alarm. "But, Lord Michael, if we sever the earthly conduit, many of the faithful will lose their divine connection." "I know," Michael interrupted sharply, his voice edged with frustration. "Then softer, but if we don't, there may be nothing left to save." The young seraph bowed her head and quickly departed, leaving a faint trail of golden light in her wake. Michael let out a slow, weary sigh. His wings folded behind him, feathers shimmering faintly as he finally allowed himself to breathe. The chaos had dulled for the moment, orders were being followed, the chain of command restored. At least the sixth heaven still listens to me, but the thought was hollow comfort. He looked upward, toward the sealed gates that separated him from the seventh heaven, the divine core he could no longer touch. Even now, faint streaks of unstable light leaked through the seams of the barrier, like blood seeping through cracked glass. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Michael clenched his fist. Father, if you can hear me, give me guidance. I no longer know what to do. But the silence that followed was deafening. With reluctance, he raised his hand and summoned a magic circle of pure light. It shimmered with delicate, geometric patterns. The circle hummed to life, pulsing faintly as it sought a connection across dimensions. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then, suddenly, a familiar, easygoing voice came through. Yo! Didn't expect you to call me, of all people. Michael froze. Azazel. On the other side, the image of the fallen leader appeared lounging in his usual black coat, a cup of wine in hand, surrounded by dim light. His amber eyes glimmered with sharp curiosity. Well, well? The great Michael himself reaching out to me? Azazel smirked. What, did you miss me, big brother? Michael's expression didn't change. This is not the time for your jokes, Azazel. That caught the fallen angel's attention. The humor in his eyes dimmed slightly. You sound serious. What's going on? Michael exhaled slowly, looking away. Something's happening in the higher realm, something unprecedented. Both the sacred gear system and the god system went berserk without warning. I can't control them. They rejected my authority entirely. Azazel blinked, lowering his cup. Rejected you? That's not possible. You're the highest-ranking seraph left. The systems are bound to respond to your commands. They should have, Michael replied quietly. But they didn't. Azazel frowned. The smirk was gone now. So what are you saying? That heaven itself has turned against you? Michael's wings shifted uneasily. It feels that way. And before I could stabilize anything, the systems forcibly severed me from the seventh heaven. I was expelled. For a moment neither spoke. Even the air between them seemed to grow heavier. Finally Azazel sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. So the god system's gone haywire. You do realize what that means, right? Michael nodded grimly. If the systems remain unstable, miracles will fail, divine weapons could activate on their own, and the balance between heaven, earth, and the underworld could collapse. Not to mention, Azazel added darkly, every single sacred gear user on Earth could start experiencing side effects. The two shared a long, tense silence. Azazel leaned back in his chair, swirling the wine in his glass, his expression thoughtful but strained. You didn't call just to tell me the world's about to end. What do you need, Michael? Michael hesitated, his golden eyes flickering with exhaustion and humility. I need help. That single word seemed to hang in the air. The great archangel of heaven, asking aid from the leader of the fallen angels. Azazel raised an eyebrow, clearly amused but also concerned. Heh. Didn't think I'd see the day. You must really be desperate. I am, Michael admitted. Something or someone has triggered a reaction deep within God's network. If this continues unchecked, it could rewrite heaven's foundation itself. Azazel's sharp gaze narrowed. Triggered how? I don't know, Michael said softly. But I fear it may be connected to something or someone on Earth. Something heaven no longer has control over. Azazel sat in silence for a long moment, then sighed, setting the glass aside. All right, Michael. You've got my attention. Let's talk. And for the first time in centuries, heaven and the fallen spoke not as enemies but as two beings staring down a catastrophe. Ku Academy, Student Council Room, late afternoon. The golden light of the setting sun streamed through the tall windows of Ku Academy, painting the polished wooden floor of the student council room with amber warmth. Outside, the faint hum of laughter and conversation drifted from the school courtyard, students celebrating the end of the school year. Inside, however, the atmosphere was quieter and heavier. At a long mahogany table, Rias Gremery sat with one elbow propped on her armrest, her crimson hair glowing under the sunset's rays. She was surrounded by scattered documents, each one marked with a different applicant's name and their background and abilities. Across from her sat Sona Citri, the newly appointed student council president and heiress of the Citri clan, her glasses gleaming faintly as she reviewed one of the papers with calm precision. Her short black hair was neatly trimmed, and her cool violet eyes reflected quiet amusement. "I've just become the student council president, and you have given me more work than my new position," Sona remarked dryly, flipping through another document. "You've really outdone yourself this time, Rias." Rias let out a light sigh, pressing her fingers against her temple. "It wasn't my idea, you know. My brother thought it would help my chances and made this more complicated than it already was." She exhaled, half irritation, half exhaustion. "Now look at this. Hundreds of applications, and most of them aren't even suitable for my team." Sona smiled faintly, adjusting her glasses. "Still, it's quite the compliment. Word of your upcoming raiding game against Razor Phoenix has spread quickly. Between your brother's influence and your reputation as the crimson-haired princess, I suppose it's no surprise that so many want to serve under you." Rias's blue eyes flicked up, the faintest blush of pride crossing her cheeks before she smothered it. "Flattery doesn't win battles, Sona. I appreciate their enthusiasm, but I'm not building a fan club. I need servants that I can trust." Sona's lips curved into a small knowing smile. "Still, it must feel nice. Not every young devil gets flooded with offers from across the underworld and earth. Even the Nibirius and Agar's clans have sent recommendations. You're something of a celebrity now." Rias gave her friend a look. "You sound like my brother. You've attracted powerful interest." "Look at this." Sona replied smoothly and slid a document across the table, her eyes glinting behind her glasses. "This applicant hails from the Valet branch. The energy signature alone suggests at least bishop-level potential. And here a swordswoman trained under the Valkyries of Asgard. That one's practically begging to be a knight." Rias scanned the glowing names, frowning softly. "Yes, I read their profiles. They're strong, too strong, perhaps. The Valet girl's family is currently under political observation by the Archduke faction. Taking her in might invite trouble I don't need." Sona arched an eyebrow. "And the Valkyrie? She's still under contract with the Norse. Odin himself has to approve her defection." Rias tapped her nail lightly on the table, frustration creeping into her tone. "It's one political snare after another. For every warrior worth recruiting, there are 10 treaties, contracts, or clan rivalries to trip over." Sona's amused expression softened into sympathy. "Being a high-class devil isn't easy, is it?" Rias leaned back, crossing her arms. "It's not the work that bothers me, it's the hypocrisy. My family wants me to be independent, to build my peerage and win my battles, yet every move I make is tied to their influence or reputation." She paused, gazing at the window where the sunlight was beginning to fade. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm fighting Razor's challenge or just trying to prove I can stand without my brother's shadow." Sona's expression grew thoughtful. "It's always both, isn't it?" she asked softly. Rias gave her a small, tired smile. "You always see right through me." Sona rested her chin on her hand. "That's what friends are for." The room fell into a companionable silence, broken only by the soft rustling of papers flickering on the table. The light of dusk bathed the two heiresses. Finally, Sona spoke again, her tone light. "You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say you enjoy rejecting all these applicants. You've dismissed half of them already." Rias chuckled softly. "Enjoy isn't the word. Necessary is. Look here." She picked up another scroll, unsealing it with a flick of her fingers. "This one's from the House of Auriax. Impressive lineage, exceptional combat record, and even offered to bring 2 familiars into my service. But after some checking," her expression darkened slightly, "I found out he's already contracted with Razor's cousin. Trying to play both sides." Sona frowned. "That's bold." "Foolish," Rias corrected, setting the document aside with a flick of her wrist. "If I accepted him, I'd be dealing with spies within my own ranks before the raiding game even begins." Sona smiled faintly. "It seems you've learned to play the political game better than you think," Rias sighed, brushing a strand of crimson hair from her face. "Perhaps. But I'd rather focus on my current peerage than gamble on strangers. My team may not have the underworld's best names, but they're mine." There was pride in her voice now, quiet, but unshakable. Sona leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. Still, you should keep the door open. After the rating game, your circumstances might change. Win or lose, your options will grow. Rias gave her a sideways glance. You mean if I survive the aftermath of embarrassing a phoenix in front of the noble houses? Sona smirked. Exactly, Rias groaned softly, resting her cheek on her hand. You could offer words of encouragement instead of subtle warnings, you know. I did, Sona replied smoothly. I said your future options will grow. I never said they'd all be pleasant. That earned her a small laugh from Rias, the tension in her shoulders easing. Thousands of papers still had to be checked, but both Rias and Sona had long since stopped reading them. The two young heiresses sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that came not from awkwardness, but from shared understanding. Finally, Rias broke it, her voice quiet but edged with frustration. I never wanted it to spiral like this. Sona looked up from her glass of tea, arching an eyebrow. You mean the rating game? Rias nodded, leaning back in her chair. It was supposed to be a formal match, one chance to earn my freedom and end this ridiculous engagement. That's all. But now it's turned into a political circus. Sona folded her hands neatly on the table, her expression thoughtful. I suspected as much when I saw the new venue announcements. Rias's blue eyes glimmered faintly in the lamplight. The date was moved up by almost a full year. My parents agreed under mutual consent with the Phoenix family, but we both know whose hand was behind that. Your mother, no doubt, Sona said calmly. She's trying to pressure you before you're ready. Rias smiled bitterly. Honestly, this is humiliation disguised as tradition. She reached for one of the documents, a message sealed with the crimson crest of the Gremory clan, and tossed it lightly on the table. Every noble house knows about the match now. The invitations for the spectators have already gone out. Lords, ladies, heirs from all the major houses, even representatives from the other pantheons. It's no longer a rating game, Sona. It's a spectacle. A political performance. Sona adjusted her glasses. Then I take it Sirzek's knows? Rias sighed heavily. Oh, he knows. She paused, looking down at her hands. He's furious, though not at me. He's angry at himself for not being able to interfere. Sona's violet eyes softened. Because of his position. Exactly? Rias's voice was quiet but full of weary affection. As Lucifer, he can't show favoritism toward his own blood, especially not in a matter like this. His political rivals are waiting for him to make even the smallest mistake. If he acts openly, they'll tear him apart and take his reforms with him. Sona nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. He's fighting a different battle. Rias gave a small, humorless laugh. He always is. He hides it behind smiles and that calm tone of his, but I can tell how much it bothers him. I think that's why he started talking. Sona tilted her head. Talking? Rias met her gaze, a hint of reluctant amusement in her expression. He can't act directly, but he can talk. And my dear brother knows exactly which ears to whisper to. Sona's lips curved faintly. Ah. So that's why so many applications suddenly became interested in your match. Exactly. Rias leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other. He's been framing this whole ordeal as a tragic story, the poor, kind-hearted sister being forced into marriage against her will. And then, he makes it sound like some great opportunity if any noble family wishes to prove themselves before the new generation of devils. Why not support a girl fighting for her own freedom? Sona let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. That's actually brilliant. Manipulative, Rias corrected. But yes, brilliant. She sighed. He can't help me directly, so instead he's turned my problem into a symbol, one that benefits his political narrative. Freedom, independence, modernization. It makes the reformist factions rally, and it makes the conservatives look like bullies if they oppose me. Sona's eyes sparkled behind her glasses. And in doing so, he's made your rating game the talk of the entire underworld. He's weaponized sympathy and made you the face of progress. Rias gave a weary smile. I never asked to be anyone's symbol, Sona. No, Sona said softly. But that's what you've become. The room fell silent again for a moment. The distant sounds of cicadas filtered through the open window, blending with the faint hum of the magic seals still hovering nearby. Finally, Sona spoke again, her tone pragmatic. So, your brother's talking brought attention. Your mother and the Phoenix family responded by pushing the date up, to throw you off balance, and make the outcome seem inevitable. Rias nodded. Exactly. It's their way of reasserting control. Some of the noble houses paint me as the ungrateful heiress who refuses a pure-blooded match, a child rebelling against tradition. Sona smirked faintly. And yet, the more they defend themselves, the more they look desperate. Rias blinked, then chuckled softly. You always find the silver lining, don't you? I'm now the student council president, Sona said simply. It's my job to find order in chaos. That earned her a genuine laugh from Rias. But beneath it, the weight of her situation still lingered. She turned her gaze toward the darkening skyline beyond the window, the faint lights of the city twinkling in the distance. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she felt. Sometimes I wish I wasn't born a Gremry. Sona frowned slightly. You don't mean that. Rias shook her head. Not entirely. I love my family, but being born into a house that shines so brightly means every shadow falls twice as deep. I can't make mistakes. I can't ask for help. And when I do, the world turns it into theater. Her voice cracked ever so slightly at the end. Sona stood quietly, moving from her chair to stand beside her. You're not alone, Rias, she said softly. You still have your peerage in me. Rias turned toward her, meeting her friend's calm, steady gaze. For a moment, the tension in her chest eased. I know, she said gently. And that's what keeps me sane. Sona smiled faintly, folding her arms. Good. Because the last thing I need is for you to lose your composure before the big day. Rias chuckled. Are you saying you're worried about me? Sona tilted her head, feigning innocence. I'm saying I'm worried about the paperwork I'll have to deal with if you do something reckless. Rias laughed, genuine and bright this time. You really can't resist, can you? Not when it's this easy, Sona said, smiling just enough to show her amusement. The moment lingered, warm, fleeting, but sincere. Then Rias exhaled, her gaze turning serious once more. Still, it's strange. So many powerful figures want to join me, to help the Crimson Princess, but none of them actually understand me. They see a cause, not a person. Sona nodded slowly. The two sat together a while longer, reviewing the remaining applications under the soft glow of twilight. For a brief moment, Rias allowed herself to relax, to remember that despite the burdens of nobility, despite the expectations of her family, and the looming raiding game, she wasn't alone. She glanced at Sona, whose violet eyes were fixed on another document, her expression calm but focused. Even she's working to help me, despite having her own responsibilities, Rias thought, a small smile tugging at her lips. Maybe I'm not the only one under pressure after all. Sona noticed her gaze and tilted her head. What's that look for? Nothing, Rias said softly, a flicker of warmth in her tone. Just thank you? Sona smiled back, faint but genuine. Anytime. As the last rays of sunset faded into the soft blue of night, the two heiresses of Ko Academy, rivals, allies, and friends continued to plan. March, Sunday, Ko Game Center, evening. The bright neon lights of one of the various arcades painted the afternoon in flashing reds, blues, and yellows. Electronic jingles blared from the rows of machines, the rhythmic clatter of buttons and digital explosions filling the air. The smell of fried snacks, cheap ramen, and soda hung thick around the aisles. Near the back corner, surrounded by empty cans of cola and crumpled snack wrappers, sat three boys, loud, animated, and very obviously celebrating. To the future! Matsuda declared dramatically, holding up a cup of instant yakisoba like it was a sacred offering. To new beginnings! To youth! To S, Motohama interrupted, pushing up his glasses with a smirk. Let's be honest, that's what you were going to say. Of course it was. Matsuda shot back without hesitation. Our hard work's finally paid off. We're officially students at Ko Academy. At that, the trio let out a collective cheer that earned them a few annoyed glances from nearby players. Sitting between them, Issei Hayato, age 15, couldn't stop grinning. His brown hair was messily spiked, and his bright brown eyes gleamed with excitement, and maybe just a bit of mischief. He had one arm slung over the back of his chair, the other clutching a bag of chips that he was too distracted to actually open. I still can't believe we actually got in, Issei said, shaking his head in disbelief. Ku Academy, the legendary Exalgirls' school. We entered a truly legendary place. Matsuda repeated in awe, slurping up his noodles. The holy land where angels walk among mortals. The school where beauty and grace meet in miniskirts. Motohama snorted, adjusting his glasses again. The lenses gleamed ominously. You know, I did some research, he said proudly. Statistically speaking, the female-to-male ratio at Ku is still 80% in favor of girls. Matsuda slammed his hand on the table. 80%? That means 4 out of 5 students we meet will be girls, Motohama finished smugly. Issei whistled low. Dude, that's like divine probability. The three of them exchanged knowing looks. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if on cue, we're finally gonna have girlfriends this year. Their united yell made the nearby crane game attendant flinch. A passing kid muttered something about idiots under his breath, but the trio was far too busy basking in their delusional joy to care. They leaned back in their chairs, riding the wave of triumph. The neon lights flickered overhead, reflecting off Issei's satisfied grin. Man, after all those study nights, all the exams, the stress, it's finally worth it, he said. We're one step closer to paradise. Step closer? Matsuda grinned wickedly. We're standing at the gates, my friend. All we gotta do is knock. Motohama, ever the realist, shrugged. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ku is full of rich girls. You know the type, top grades, perfect manners, look at you like you're something they stepped on. Matsuda waved a hand dismissively. Doesn't matter. A pervert's heart knows no class boundaries. Issei laughed so hard he nearly dropped his chips. That might be the dumbest and truest thing you've ever said. The three broke into hysterical laughter. After a while, when the laughter finally died down, Issei leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His grin softened into something more thoughtful. Still, he said quietly, it's kinda crazy, huh? We're really starting high school. Feels like the start of something big. Matsuda looked at him, surprised by the sudden seriousness. Whoa, philosophical, I see. You okay, man? Issei chuckled. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just saying we've been talking about this for years. Getting into Ku, starting fresh, meeting new people. He paused, staring at his reflection in his soda can. I guess it's weird to think that it's actually happening now. Motohama nudged him with a smirk. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet already. You're the one who dragged us into this plan. Hey, I'm not backing out. Issei protested, raising both hands. It's just I don't know. Feels like a new chapter or something. Like everything's about to change. Matsuda grinned and slung an arm over his shoulder. Damn right it is. The era of the perverted trio is about to begin. Era? Motohama deadpanned. You make it sound like a historical event. It will be, Matsuda said proudly. One day, people will look back and say, there were once 3 brave men who risked everything to pursue love. Or peeping, Issei muttered. Semantics. Matsuda shot back. The 3 burst into laughter again, loud and carefree. Later, as the day continued and the trio were heading somewhere else to celebrate, Issei stood outside with Matsuda and Motohama, the cool spring breeze brushing against their clothes. Issei tilted his head toward the sky, a faint smile on his face. You know I can't wait to see what kind of girls go there. Matsuda snickered. Me too. Rich girls, noble girls, maybe even foreign exchange students. I'm gonna talk to every single one of them. Statistically, Motohama said, you'll be rejected by at least 90%. Then I'll charm the remaining 10. Matsuda declared heroically. Issei shook his head, laughing. You two are hopeless. As he looked up at the faint stars scattered across the night sky, a flicker of excitement sparked in his chest. Ku Academy, huh? Their laughter echoed softly between the buildings, loud enough to draw a few glares from passing pedestrians. So, Matsuda said, stretching his arms behind his head. Where should we celebrate next? We should go to the mall or something. Maybe hit the pool, scope out the local beauties. Motohama adjusted his glasses, the lenses catching the streetlight. Pools won't open until summer. But I like the way you think. In the meantime, we can scope out the local cafes. I heard the one near the station has waitresses in uniforms? Issei guessed immediately. Motohama grinned. You know me too well. The trio laughed again, completely lost in a little world of teenage delusions and dreams. But then Issei's laughter faltered. His voice caught in his throat as his gaze drifted past his friends, across the street. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. There, standing under the soft glow of a lamppost, was a girl, unlike anyone he'd ever seen. She looked around their age, maybe a bit older, dressed in a neat white blouse and a flowing navy skirt that danced gently with the evening breeze. Her long, silver hair shimmered under the light, cascading down her back like a waterfall of moonlight. Her bangs framed her pale, elegant face perfectly, and then she turned her head. Their eyes met. Her gaze was piercing, radiant golden yellow color. For a heartbeat, Issei forgot to breathe. Something inside him stirred, a sensation that was both electric and familiar, like déjà vu and destiny woven together. The world around him dimmed, the noise of his friends fading into static. All that existed was that girl and the strange pull between them, as if something deep in his soul had just recognized her. Matsuda noticed the sudden silence and followed his gaze. Hey, I see what? But before he could finish, the girl began walking toward them. Each step she took seemed deliberate, graceful, and yet oddly casual. Her golden eyes never left Issei's. Even the sound of her shoes on the pavement felt like a rhythm meant only for him. When she finally stopped in front of him, the faint scent of lavender drifted through the air. And then she spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, with a faint foreign lilt. You, she said, looking directly at Issei. Would you like to eat with me? Issei blinked. Eh? Matsuda and Motohama froze beside him, jaws dropping simultaneously. What? Matsuda shouted, almost choking on his own words. She's talking to you? Motohama's glasses nearly slid off his face. Issei, what the hell did you do? Did you save her life in a past life or something? Issei, still staring blankly at the silver-haired girl, struggled to form words. His brain had officially stopped working. Wait, you're talking to me? Yes, the girl said simply, tilting her head as if she found the question strange. I'm hungry and could use some company. Issei's stomach, traitorous as ever, chose that moment to grumble audibly. Matsuda and Motohama burst out laughing. Bwahaha! Dude, your stomach just betrayed you. After all that junk food. Matsuda cackled, clutching his side. Motohama snickered. And here we thought your luck with girls was permanently in the negatives. Issei's face burned crimson. Shut up, you two. He turned back to the girl, his words fumbling. Yeah. Sure. I'd love to eat with you. The girl smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips that made his chest tighten. Good, she said softly. Then come with me. Matsuda's face twisted in disbelief. Wait. You're just going to go with her? Of course I am. Issei yelled, his voice cracking slightly. You think opportunities like this just fall from the sky? She's way out of your league, man. Motohama hissed. Maybe that's what makes it fate. Issei shot back, already half following the girl. The two friends groaned simultaneously. Unbelievable, Matsuda muttered, slapping a hand over his face. He gets one look at a goddess and turns into a simp. Correction, Motohama said, deadpan. He was always a simp. This just confirms it. Guys. Issei turned back, flashing them a huge grin. Don't wait up. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. And with that, he jogged to catch up with the mysterious girl, leaving his two friends standing dumbfounded on the sidewalk. Dude, Matsuda muttered weakly, watching them disappear down the street. He actually scored before high school even started. Motohama adjusted his glasses, shaking his head. Statistically impossible, yet somehow, it happened. Unreal. Meanwhile, Issei walked beside the girl, trying not to trip over his own feet. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it echoing in his ears. He began awkwardly, thanks for inviting me. I'm Issei. Issei Hayadu. The girl glanced at him, her golden eyes gleaming faintly under the streetlights. Melusine, she said. Melusine du Lac. Issei blinked. Melusine du? He fumbled over the pronunciation. That's a cool name. Her lips twitched, almost like she wanted to laugh. You may call me Melusine. Melusine, he repeated, testing the sound. Wow, that's really unique. I am, she said simply, with the kind of confidence that made it sound like a statement of fact rather than arrogance. Issei chuckled nervously. I can tell. They continued down the quiet street, the sun shining from her silver hair as the faint sounds of the arcade faded behind them. And though Issei didn't understand it, though he could barely think straight in her presence, something about this moment felt right. Family diner evening. As Issei Hayadu continued to follow Melusine du Lac down the busy street. The city had begun to cool, and the glow from nearby street lamps bathed the sidewalk in amber light. They eventually stopped in front of a small family diner tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. The scent of fried food and coffee hung thick in the air, and the large windows showed cozy booths occupied by chatting families and couples. Melusine paused in front of the entrance, her golden eyes glancing toward Issei. This place will do, she said calmly. Issei blinked. Yeah? Totally. I'm sure the food here will be great. He had never eaten there before. Melusine opened the door, the small bell above it chiming softly, and they stepped inside. They sat at a booth near the window, the red vinyl seats squeaking softly as they slid in. The warm glow of hanging lamps gave the place a welcoming air, though Issei's heart was anything but calm. He fidgeted with the edge of his menu, glancing nervously at the silver-haired girl across from him. Melusine sat perfectly straight, her posture refined, her long hair draping over her shoulder. Even in casual clothes, she radiated an elegance that didn't belong in a place like this. For a few moments neither spoke. Then, Melusine broke the silence. So, she said, her voice soft but firm, tell me about yourself, Issei Hayadu. Huh? Oh. Right, me. He scratched his cheek, trying to find where to start. Well, I just graduated middle school. I, got accepted into Co-Academy today. Congratulations, Melusine said politely. Her expression didn't change much, but her tone was sincere. Thanks, Issei said, grinning. It wasn't easy, though. Co's entrance exams were brutal. My friends and I were sure we'd bombed it, but we somehow passed. Melusine tilted her head slightly. You're close to them? Yeah. We've been friends since we started junior high. They're idiots, though. Her lips curved slightly, the faintest hint of a smile. I see. The waitress came by and took their orders, a hamburger steak for Issei and a small pasta dish for Melusine. When she left, the silence returned, but it wasn't as awkward this time. Issei leaned forward a little. What about you? Where are you going for high school? Melusine looked down at her folded hands for a moment before replying. An international private academy in Tokyo. My guardian insisted on it. Sounds fancy, Issei said with an impressed whistle. It's suffocating, she admitted, her tone flat. He blinked. Wait, really? Her gaze drifted toward the window, watching the lights outside blur past. Everyone there is polite. Perfect. Controlled. Every word is measured, every smile calculated. It's less of a school and more of a stage. Her reflection in the glass looked distant, beautiful, but lonely. Issei watched her quietly, then smiled a little. Guess that means this is the first time you've been on the ground, huh? She blinked, turning to him. On the ground? You know, out here, in the normal world, he said, gesturing around. Eating diner food, talking to a random idiot who just got into high school. Melusine's eyes softened, a faint glimmer of amusement flickering there. Perhaps, she said. But you're an interesting idiot. Issei grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. The corner of her mouth twitched a tiny, genuine smile this time. Their food arrived, and as they ate, the conversation began to flow more easily. Melusine spoke about her childhood, her time abroad, her guardian's expectations, and her many lessons. I was trained in ballet and fencing since I was 5, she explained, twirling her fork absently. They said grace and precision would make me an ideal lady. Issei tilted his head. Ballet and fencing, huh? That's kinda cool, actually. You must be amazing at it. I'm adequate, she said with modesty, though the faint blush on her cheeks betrayed the pride she tried to hide. Issei smiled. So, you can probably cut me in half with a pointy stick. Melusine gave him a flat look, but there was a faint sparkle of amusement in her golden eyes. That's not inaccurate. Issei laughed, his bright energy filling the small booth. Man, that's awesome. Guess I'll have to train in self-defense just in case. I'm sure you'd lose, she said dryly, but her voice was softer now. Probably, he admitted. But at least I'd lose to a beautiful girl. I could live with that. Her fork paused midair, and for the first time, she blushed, a soft, rosy pink blooming across her cheeks. She quickly looked away. You're rather bold. Only when I'm nervous, Issei confessed, scratching his head sheepishly. And I'm really nervous right now. That made her laugh, a quiet, genuine laugh that surprised even her. Issei froze for a moment, stunned by how beautiful it sounded. There it is, he said softly. There what is? Your laugh. He grinned. You should do that more often. It suits you better than the serious look. Melusine blinked, the faintest look of surprise flickering across her features before she turned her gaze down, hiding the small smile tugging at her lips. You're strange. I get that a lot, he replied with a playful shrug. As they finished their meals, the conversation drifted toward hobbies. So, besides ballet and fencing, what else do you like to do? Issei asked. Melusine thought for a moment. Reading. Classical music. Sometimes painting, though I'm not good at it. Sounds pretty refined, Issei said. Her eyes glinted faintly. And you? He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Well, I like girls. Melusine blinked. Girls? I mean, you know, like Big Boba S. And the female body in general. Her expression didn't change, but her eyebrows raised slightly. That's honest of you. Issei blushed furiously. I swear I'm not just some creep. I just think women are amazing, you know? Beautiful, mysterious, terrifying. You make us sound like mythological creatures, she said dryly. You kind of are, he said earnestly. But that's not all I'm into. Oh? She asked, tilting her head. He hesitated, then smiled shyly. I also like pottery. And art class. I'm actually pretty good with my hands. Melusine blinked, surprised. Pottery? Yeah, he said, scratching his cheek. We suddenly had a class in junior high. And somehow I learned that I have talent in making figurines. It's calming. You just shaped something beautiful out of nothing. Her eyes softened. That's unexpectedly thoughtful. He laughed nervously. Told you I wasn't all bad. Melusine looked at him quietly for a moment, studying him like she was trying to memorize his face. Then she smiled. You're not bad at all, Issei Hayadu. They sat together for another hour, talking about small things, music, movies, even dumb stories from middle school. For someone who seemed so composed, Melusine laughed more than she expected to, and Issei found himself smiling more than he had all week. When it was finally time to leave, they stood outside the diner, the moon hanging high above them. Well, Issei said, rubbing the back of his head. This was actually really fun. I agree, Melusine said softly. You're easy to talk to. He grinned. You too. For someone so serious, you're kinda nice once you start talking. Her cheeks colored again. Don't get used to it. They both laughed, and then Melusine reached into her bag, pulling out her phone. Give me your line ID. Huh, so I can contact you, she said simply. I'd like to meet you and talk again. Tomorrow, perhaps. Issei blinked stunned, before fumbling for his phone. Yeah. Totally. They exchanged IDs, their fingers brushing for a brief second, and Issei swore he felt that same strange spark from before, that quiet pull between them. Melusine slipped her phone away and gave him a small nod. I'll be seeing you tomorrow then, Issei. Yeah, he said softly, smiling. I'll be looking forward to it. She hesitated for a moment, then said gently, and congratulations. On getting into Ko Academy. Her voice lowered, almost wistful. It's a shame we won't be going to the same high school. Before Issei could respond, she turned gracefully and began walking down the street, her silver hair shimmering under the moonlight. Issei watched her go, unable to move, the faintest smile still on his face. Melusine Dulac, he murmured under his breath. He didn't know what it was, but he knew one thing for certain: he wanted to see her again. 3 months later. Asgard, realm of the Norse gods. Once, the mighty realm of Asgard shone like a jewel above the 9 realms, its golden towers reaching toward the heavens, its halls echoing with the laughter of gods. The Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, had connected it to the mortal world below, a ribbon of divine light that symbolized the bond between the sacred and the living. Now, that light was gone. The bridge lay shattered, its crystalline arcs collapsed into the abyss. The great halls of Valhalla burned, their proud golden walls twisted into molten ruins. The air was thick with the stench of ash, blood, and ozone, the dying breath of divinity itself. Bodies littered the marble streets, warriors, valkyries, and gods alike. Many lay dismembered, broken, or simply turned to dust, their divine essence flickering out like candles in a storm. What once was eternal now looked pitifully mortal. At the center of the devastation, where the golden palace had once stood, the air shimmered with distortion. Reality itself bent, warped, and trembled, as if the universe refused to look directly at what stood there. And there she was, Ophis, the dragon god of infinity. She stood barefoot among the ruins, her long black hair falling like a curtain of night over her pale, flawless skin. Her dress was a simple, black silk flowing like ink, but reality seemed to twist around her presence, as if her very being rejected limitation. Her eyes, deep and dark as an endless void, looked down at one of the last surviving gods in front of her. Loki, the trickster, lay half-crushed beneath the broken statue of Odin. His body was mangled, blood dripping from his lips, yet his smile remained, defiant, mocking, unyielding even in death's grip. Ophis's slender hand was wrapped around his throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Her expression was unreadable, either anger nor joy, just a quiet, chilling stillness. Loki's lips curled into a smirk despite the blood trickling from them. "Hey, you really did it, didn't you?" His voice rasped, half-choked, half-laughing. "You actually destroyed everything." Ophis tilted her head slightly, her void-like eyes blinking once, slow and deliberate. "You don't understand," Loki coughed, his smile widening into a grin of delirious satisfaction. "Even if you kill me, even if you erase us all, you can't undo what's been done. We won your trial, dragon." "We." His words were cut off as Ophis's grip tightened. The crack of bone echoed through the ruined halls of Asgard. Her voice, calm and melodic, carried through the silence that followed. "You talk too much." Loki's body twitched once, then went limp. Ophis stared at him for a long moment, her face expressionless. Then, with a simple twist of her wrist, she snapped his neck completely. The sound was quiet, final. The trickster god of chaos fell still in her grasp. She let him hang there for a moment, as if studying the lifeless shell, then released him. His body crumpled into the ashes of what once was Odin's throne room. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Ophis stepped forward, bare feet leaving faint ripples of energy on the broken marble floor. Around her, the remnants of Asgard trembled as though the world itself feared her presence. "You were interesting," she murmured softly. Her voice carried neither pride nor cruelty, only the truth, spoken with divine detachment. When there was nothing left but ashes, Ophis straightened, brushing her hands together. She gazed out across the ruined skyline, a world of gods now silent beneath her feet. The fires reflected faintly in her dark eyes, but no emotion stirred within them. Still, as she looked toward the horizon where Bifrost once glowed, her lips moved again, a whisper, so faint that even the ashes barely heard it. "When you are born again," she said softly, "I hope you will work with me." A faint wind swept through the ruins, scattering the ashes of gods into the sky, and Ophis, the infinite dragon, stood alone amid the silence. The only sound left in Asgard was the faint echo of her footsteps as she walked toward the fading light, and then disappeared in a burst of darkness. Italy. Rome Fiumicino Airport, late night. The air inside the airport was thick with the scent of coffee and countless voices echoing over the polished marble floors. Announcements blared from overhead speakers in Italian and English, blending into a constant hum of movement and life. Travelers hurried past with rolling luggage, families embraced near the departure gates, and flight attendants glided gracefully through the crowds in crisp uniforms. Among them, unnoticed and hooded, walked Asia Argento. Her heart beat in her throat as she clutched the strap of her small satchel, the same one that now carried everything she owned in this world: her rosary, her Bible, and a few treasured keepsakes. The silver cross around her neck gleamed faintly under the fluorescent lights, a quiet symbol of faith in a place that no longer felt sacred. She had spent many days hiding, moving between abandoned buildings, sleeping under bridges, and slipping through alleyways, always fearing that an exorcist or anyone from the church may find and capture her. But at last, after all the running, she had reached her only chance of escape, and the fastest way to reach Japan: the airport. Now all she needed now was a plane where she could carefully board without anyone noticing. Asia stood near the large glass windows overlooking the runways, her green eyes scanning the parked aircrafts under the night sky. Above her, she could see the blinking lights of distant planes taking off, each one soaring away. She swallowed hard, her heart fluttering in her chest. "I just have to find one that's going east," she murmured softly, more to herself than to anyone else. Her reflection in the glass looked pale and fragile, a young woman wrapped in a hooded cloak too big for her small frame, eyes shadowed by fatigue and fear. But just as despair began to weigh on her shoulders, soft light began to bloom beside her. 3 small feathery orbs flickered into view, her cherubs, her tiny, faithful companions. Each hovered close, glowing gently like lanterns. Their wings fluttered soundlessly, scattering faint motes of light that faded before they reached the ground. Asia's lips curved into a tired but genuine smile. "Ikaros, Tia, Luke," she whispered their names tenderly. The orbs chirped in response, their light pulsing in gentle rhythm, like the beat of small, happy hearts. Ikaros, the smallest of the trio, glowed with a soft pink hue. She always lingered close to Asia, timid and easily startled, often hiding in her cloak when crowds became too large. And then she always followed her siblings. Tia, bright yellow and radiant as sunlight, spun in excited loops through the air, her curiosity boundless. Every new sight drew her attention: the glint of glass, the reflection of light, the distant gleam of an airplane wing. And Luke, shining blue and bold, circled them both protectively. His glow pulsed brighter than the others, not out of pride, but out of a childlike need to prove himself. He was the boldest and most mischievous, the self-proclaimed leader of the trio. He loved testing Asia's patience almost as much as he loved protecting her. Asia giggled softly as the 3 twirled around her, their faint chimes ringing like wind bells in a summer breeze. For a moment, the noise and her troubles seemed far away. "I'm glad you're here," she murmured, touching her hand lightly over her heart. "Without you 3, I don't think I'd have made it this far." The cherubs answered with 3 soft pie chirps, bobbing up and down in excitement. Their innocence made her heart ache. Even now, surrounded by strangers and hunted by those she once called allies, they made her feel safe. She had no idea where they had come from, or why they had chosen to follow her, but their presence felt like a small miracle in a world that had turned its back on her. She reached out, her fingers brushing faint trails of light as she looked at them lovingly. "Listen, I need to ask you something important," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Can you go in there?" She nodded toward the terminal gates ahead. "I need you to look around and see which plane is heading to Japan." The 3 orbs tilted slightly, as if confused. Asia smiled sheepishly, kneeling a little so she could speak to them like children. "I know it's a lot to ask," she said softly. "You might not even understand what I'm saying. But if I go out there myself, someone might notice me." Her eyes flicked toward the crowd, to the occasional figure in uniform, to the way the security guards occasionally glanced at passengers' documents. She had learned to see danger in every gesture, every face that lingered too long. "I don't want to risk it," she whispered, looking back at her tiny companions. "You 3 are small enough to slip by unseen. Just look for signs, or papers, or anything that says Tokyo or Japan, all right?" Ikaros fluttered forward and gave a quiet, determined chirp, her pink light pulsing once. Tia twirled in midair, saluting with her little wing. "Pie!" Luke crossed his tiny blue wings in front of his chest and nodded once, his glow sharpening with confidence, the little leader of their group, ready for his mission. Asia couldn't help but giggle softly, tears stinging her eyes. "You're all so brave," she said. "All right then, good luck." She pressed her palms together and bowed her head slightly. "May the Lord watch over you, little ones." The 3 cherubs spun around her once, their chiming tones blending in harmony like a tiny choir's farewell, and then, with a sound like the flicker of a candle, they vanished. The light dimmed, the air grew still, and Asia was alone again. She moved to sit on a nearby bench, lowering her hood slightly as she pretended to walk like any ordinary traveler. Every second felt longer than the last. The sound of footsteps and rolling luggage became a heartbeat in her ears. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her satchel. "Please be safe, all of you." Outside the window, she saw the soft glint of wings for only an instant, Tia darting between the landing lights before vanishing again. They were busy searching and helping. Asia exhaled shakily and allowed herself to close her eyes for a moment. In the darkness, flashes of memories appeared: Issei's smiling face, the warmth of his arms, his clumsy laugh. Her chest ached with longing. "Issei, I'm coming. Just a little longer. I'll find you." The faintest ripple of divine energy brushed against her senses, the connection between her and the cherubs pulsing softly, like a heartbeat shared between them. They were still out there, searching diligently, and through that mysterious bond she could feel their excitement. But her brief comfort faded as a chill ran down her spine, the faint echo of intuition. A premonition shimmered behind her eyes. It came in flashes: 3 figures in priestly robes walking in formation, crosses glinting under their coats. Holy weapons glinting under the terminal lights. Exorcists had entered the airport, and they were here searching for her. Asia froze, her pulse racing. "No," she whispered. Not now. She could feel their intent, calm, disciplined, merciless. Her breath trembled, but she didn't panic. Not anymore. She had lived like this for weeks, hunted, praying, running, surviving. She whispered under her breath, "Tia, Ikaros, Luke, come back to me." Now. The air shimmered around her, and within seconds, the 3 cherubs reappeared, flickering with urgency. Their halos flickered in alarm, and Luke flew forward as if ready to fight, his tiny body glowing brighter. "No," Asia whispered firmly, forcing herself to calm. "We run." Asia didn't waste a second. "Did you find the right one?" The trio chirped rapidly, spinning in excited loops. Though they spoke only in musical tones, Asia somehow understood. It wasn't words, but meaning, carried through the warmth that connected their souls. Asia smiled faintly, though her hands trembled. "Thank you? All of you." There was no time. "Then let's go. Quickly, before they find us." Gathering her courage, she slipped into the nearest crowd of departing passengers, her small frame disappearing among the tide of bodies. Behind her, 3 lights blinked faintly once and vanished, following their mother unseen. And as she walked toward the gate marked Tokyo, Flight 842, Asia whispered a final prayer under her breath. "Please, Lord, just let this one miracle come true." Minutes crawled by like hours. Every second felt like an eternity, as Asia Argento's pulse thundered in her chest as she moved carefully through the terminal. Her steps were light, her hood drawn low to hide her face. The world around her felt too loud, the clattering wheels of suitcases, the constant hum of conversation, the sharp tones of departure announcements echoing from the ceiling speakers. Every noise made her flinch. Every reflection in the polished floor seemed like a shadow moving toward her. Her hands trembled around the strap of her satchel as she whispered a desperate prayer under her breath. "Lord, please, just a little longer." Please. Her voice was swallowed by the noise of the crowd, but she hoped someone, anyone, was listening. She quickened her pace, weaving between groups of travelers, slipping through lines. Her vision had not lied. Through the corner of her eye, she saw them, 3 men in dark coats, moving with practiced precision through security. Asia's heart seized. She turned sharply, eyes darting toward the nearest gate. "I have to move now." And then she ran. Her cloak billowed behind her like a ghost shadow as she sprinted down the terminal walkway. The polished floor reflected the frantic movement of her boots, the rolling of luggage, the click of boots, even the mechanical voice announcing departures all seemed to blend into one overwhelming heartbeat. The crowd gasped as she brushed past, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Behind her, Unseen by human eyes, 3 small streaks of light flitted through the air, darting between people and security scanners. Ikaros, Tia, and Luke followed closely, their halos faint glimmers against the artificial lights. "Stay close," she whispered breathlessly, not even realizing she was speaking aloud. "Please, just a little further." Then something happened, something she didn't notice at first. The cherubs chirped in soft harmony, their tiny voices blending into a note that vibrated faintly in the air. Their halos expanded, shimmering like ripples on water, and suddenly a faint wave of divine light rippled across Asia's cloak. The people around her blinked, confused, as if something had just passed before them and yet nothing was there. Her footsteps still echoed, but no one turned to look. Asia Argento had become invisible to the human eye. She reached the boarding area, panting hard. The last passengers were already stepping onto the jet bridge, and the attendant at the gate was lowering the retractable belt. Asia froze for half a heartbeat, her breath ragged. This is it. Her stomach twisted. She hated what she was about to do, lying, sneaking, breaking the rules, but there was no other choice. She bowed her head slightly. "Forgive me," she whispered. And then she slipped under the belt and bolted forward. She darted past a luggage cart, her cloak brushing against its metal side, and pushed open a maintenance door just as a nearby alarm gave a warning beep. Her heart leapt into her throat, but she didn't dare look back. The hallway ahead was narrow, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. She could hear the faint shouts behind her now, the attendant calling security, footsteps echoing distantly. Asia ran faster. Almost there, she gasped. "Please let this work." Asia emerged into the cargo area of the runway. The open hatch of a plane loomed before her, a silver giant with its belly open to receive luggage. The night air whipped her hair as engines groaned to life somewhere nearby. Her lungs burned. The cherubs circled her head excitedly, their little wings fluttering faster now. "Good job," she breathed, her voice trembling. "Good job, everyone." She climbed up the narrow ramp into the luggage compartment, ducking low behind stacked crates. The metal floor was cold against her knees as she crouched, trying to make herself small. Her hands shook violently. "Please, please don't let them find me." One by one, the cherubs dimmed their lights and darted into her satchel. Ikaros first, then Tia, and finally Luke, who gave a mischievous chirp before vanishing last. Asia exhaled shakily. "Thank you," she whispered to them, her voice barely audible over the rising hum of the engines. The plane began to move. Through a small circular window near the cargo door, she saw the runway lights stretching out into the darkness. The engines thundered, the ground trembled, and the world outside began to slide away. Tears welled in Asia's eyes as she pressed a trembling hand to her heart. "Issei," she whispered through her tears. "I'm coming. Please wait for me." The vibration of the plane deepened as it lifted from the earth. The gravity of her old life fell away with it, her home. The church became nothing more than a blur of gold and shadow beneath the clouds. She held her satchel close, feeling the faint warmth of the cherubs inside. Above the clouds, the night stretched endless and starry, the world below fading into silence. The engines hummed steadily, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Asia's breath came slowly, peacefully. The cherubs peeked out of the satchel, 3 tiny lights glowing faintly like stars. Asia smiled, small and tired but sincere. "We did it." She leaned her head against the cool metal wall, eyes growing heavy as the adrenaline faded. "Just a little longer, then we'll be safe." Her eyelids fluttered, exhaustion taking her. The last thing she saw before slipping into uneasy sleep was the endless sea of stars above. But destiny, as always, was never so kind. As the plane soared through the night, carrying her further from everything she thought she knew. For the first time in days, Asia Argento dared to sleep peacefully, unfortunately unaware that in her haste she had boarded the wrong plane. A dream. In a world surrounded by endless fire, a roar shook the world itself. The sound was ancient, deep, thunderous, and filled with anguish so profound that even the flames trembled. Lava rivers boiled beneath blackened skies, mountains crumbled under the force of that cry, and the air itself seemed to scream in sympathy. There, chained among the burning ruins, a great red dragon writhed in agony. His scales, once radiant as molten ruby, now cracked and bled light. Each breath he took caused the ground to quake, each heartbeat split the fabric of the infernal realm around him. Drake, the Red Dragon Emperor. For centuries he had slumbered within this artifact forged from his remains, enduring silence, solitude, and the weight of his sins. But now, something has changed. Something had gone horribly wrong. His body convulsed as light tore through him, disintegrating his very essence. The chains that bound him didn't just restrain, they drained, siphoning his power, his identity, his existence. He bellowed into the firestorm, voice hoarse from his constant screaming. What is happening? The flames surged around him, consuming the very air. He felt his consciousness splinter, fragments of himself scattering through the void. The sensation was unbearable. The very feeling of being erased. Pain became panic. Panic turned to fury. So this is how it ends? He roared, his voice cracking into the inferno. After everything I endured, after all the battles, my hatred, my imprisonment, I am to die alone in the dark. No one answered. Only the sound of fire, and the chains that continued to tighten around him. And as he struggled, something changed. The flames warped, pulsing in unnatural rhythm. For the first time in eternity, Drake felt fear. A power, colder than the void, pressed down upon him, not to destroy, but to overwrite. His soul trembled. The world flickered. His roar became distant. His voice, once mighty enough to shake realms, faded into a broken whisper. No, not yet, not like this. The great dragon screamed and the world of fire shattered like glass. Meanwhile, far away from that burning dreamscape, Issei stirred in his sleep. His face twitched, his breathing unsteady. Sweat beaded along his forehead as he tossed under his blanket, caught between a nightmare and a vision. In his dream he saw it all, that world of fire, the chains, the dragon's tortured voice echoing in his mind. He didn't know how or why, but he felt that pain. Someone help me. The voice wasn't in words, but emotions, full of sorrow and impossibly vast. Issei clenched his hands in his sleep. He wanted to move, to reach into the flames, to do something. But every time he tried, the image flickered and pulled away, like sand slipping through his fingers. Then, suddenly the fire was gone. The world around him shifted. Issei then found himself standing in countless locations at once. Memories not his own flooded his mind, battlefields soaked in blood and glory, men and women with eyes full of determination, each wearing a red gauntlet that pulsed with red energy. He saw them fight, some against angels, others against devils, dragons, and gods. He saw them triumph. He saw them fall. Each life was different. Each story unique. But all of them carried the same fire, the same red light burning against impossible odds. Issei could feel it, the rhythm of battle, the flow of energy through their veins, the surge of strength when a word was shouted. Boost! The sound reverberated through his soul. He watched the red gauntlet glow brighter, devouring the aura of every enemy it faced. He watched men become legends. And at the end of each vision, he saw a single opponent, one with white translucent wings and armor. A flash of radiance, so beautiful and terrible that even the dreams around him trembled. Red clashed with white, dragon against dragon. He couldn't see the outcome. Only the feeling, a burning rivalry that stretched across eternity. And then the visions faded. The dragons, the warriors, all vanished into smoke. Issei was left standing in an empty void, his heart pounding, his mind echoing with the roar of the red dragon. Why am I dreaming this? He muttered in the dark, his voice echoing faintly in the empty space. My dreams are usually so different. Full of cute girls with big épée, maybe in a swimsuit or two. Definitely not flaming dragons screaming at me. He let out a nervous laugh, trying to make sense of it. But deep down, part of him knew this wasn't just a dream. Japan, Hayada residence. Morning. The alarm clock blared. Ugh. Issei Hayada groaned, rolling over in bed and slapping the snooze button so hard that the old thing gave a pitiful click before shutting up completely. He blinked blearily at the ceiling, trying to remember what he'd been dreaming about. It was strange. His heart was pounding like he just finished running laps, and his whole body felt warm. Heavy and light at the same time, like his veins were full of fire and air together. What was that? He muttered, pressing a hand to his chest. The details of the dream were gone. He could only recall flashes, heat, a sound that might have been a roar, and a feeling that had left him both terrified and oddly inspired. But as he sat there longer, even that faded away, leaving only the dull comfort of morning sunlight spilling through his curtains. Probably just one of those weird dreams from eating too much. He told himself, yawning. Still, he felt different. His body hummed with energy he couldn't explain. He swung his legs off the bed and stood up, stretching until his spine popped. There was a strange ease in every movement. His muscles felt loose, powerful, almost weightless. Man, I feel great today, he said with a grin. Like I could sprint a marathon. The thought made him laugh. He shuffled toward his closet, still half asleep, and grabbed his uniform jacket. As he turned to head for the bathroom, he reached for the doorknob. The metal crumpled under his fingers with a soft crack, the knob falling apart in his palm like tinfoil, and crushed it. Huh! Issei stared at the ruined handle, his brain taking a solid 5 seconds to process what had just happened. He turned his hand over, expecting to see cuts or bruises, but his skin was unmarked. Not even red. What the? I didn't grab it that hard, he said, baffled. He flexed his fingers, then tried squeezing the broken knob experimentally. It bent again, even easier this time, until he dropped it on the floor with a metallic clink. For a moment he just stood there, staring, completely blank. Must have been cheap metal, he finally muttered, shrugging it off. Yeah. Definitely cheap metal. He could practically hear his mom yelling at him for breaking things again, so he quickly stuffed the remains into the nearby trash bin before she noticed. By the time he got to the bathroom, he'd already forgotten the oddity. As he brushed his teeth, humming to himself. His reflection smiled back, his normal brown hair, normal face, normal slightly perverted grin. If anything, he thought he looked healthier. His skin was clearer, his eyes brighter. Guess all that walking to school is paying off, he said around his toothbrush. He rinsed, fixed his uniform collar, and gave the mirror a wink. You're looking good, Hayato. Today's gonna be a great day. Outside, the morning sunlight bathed Kotown in gold. The faint chill of spring still lingered in the air as Issei walked to school, whistling. The streets were full of students in matching uniforms, and he caught himself grinning at the sight of a few passing girls in skirts a little shorter than regulation. It had been a week since he'd started at Ku Academy, and he still couldn't believe his luck. An all-girls school now open to boys? It was like a dream come true, a dream filled with angelic classmates and skirted miracles, he sighed happily. Truly, the gods have blessed me. School itself passed in a pleasant blur. Between staring out windows, chatting with Matsuda and Motohama about strategic girl-watching techniques, and avoiding detention, Issei couldn't have been happier. But what made each day special wasn't just the new scenery. It was her. Melusine Dulac. The silver-haired foreign girl with eyes of gold. Even thinking her name made his pulse quicken. They'd met by chance, and somehow, against all laws of probability, she'd chosen to keep spending time with him. Every afternoon they met, sometimes stopping for crepes, other times just talking through messages long into the night. For someone so reserved, she'd opened up little by little, small smiles, gentle teasing, quiet moments that lingered far too long. Issei couldn't believe how lucky he was. I honestly don't get it, he mumbled as he packed his books after class. A girl like her hanging out with a guy like me? There's no way this isn't a dream. Motohama, hearing his muttering and knowing who he was talking about, smirked. Maybe she likes losers. Shut up. Issei shot back, laughing despite himself. But deep down, he worried. Their friendship was perfect, comfortable, easy, even peaceful. And the thought of ruining it made his stomach twist. He wanted to ask her out, to say something, anything. But every time he thought about it, his courage shriveled fast. Still, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow he has a date. Not just any hang, an actual, honest-to-God date with Melusine. The words still didn't feel real. He could already see at the park, her soft smile as they talked. Maybe he'd finally tell her how he felt. Tomorrow's the day, he whispered to himself, grinning as he walked home. No backing out. As Asia slept through the endless hum of the plane's engines faded into something softer, and gentler, as she dreamed. The cold metal walls of the cargo hold melted away, replaced by sunlight pouring through the open window of a small, rustic home. Wooden beams glowed honeygold in the light of morning. Outside, the wind danced through tall fields of wheat that stretched endlessly toward a horizon of green hills. She could hear laughter, children's laughter. Asia turned toward the sound, and her heart trembled. Through the doorway, Issei stood in the fields, shirt sleeves rolled up, sweat glistening on his skin as he worked the soil. He waved cheerfully toward the house before bending down again, his movements full of strength and peace. Inside, Asia stood barefoot on a simple wooden floor, wearing a white apron over a summer dress. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. In her arms she carried a small, warm bundle, a child. Another tiny figure tugged at her skirt, giggling, holding a toy shaped like a little dragon. For a moment, everything was perfect. She felt a strange warmth rise in her chest, a tingling, unfamiliar sensation that made her feel happiness. The kind of happiness she had only ever imagined in prayer. Her vision blurred. She wanted to move closer, to see their faces, to call out to them. But before she could, the world shimmered. The sound of wind became a deep metallic rumble. The smell of bread turned to oil and steel, and then darkness. Asia's eyes fluttered open. The dream shattered like glass. The faint roar of engines replaced the gentle hum of the countryside. The warm sunlight was gone, replaced by the dim flicker of the storage compartment lights. Her heart still ached with that strange, lingering emotion. She pressed a hand over her chest, whispering softly, "Was that another vision?" Her voice barely carried over the low mechanical hum of the cargo hold. Reality returned slowly, the cold floor beneath her knees, the rhythmic shaking of the plane, the faint scent of oil and metal. She sat up, careful not to bump her head on the ceiling, and looked around. The 3 small cherubs slept inside her open satchel, their tiny bodies glowing faintly with warm, pastel light. For a moment, the sight made her smile. Ikaros, the smallest, snuggled against a folded piece of cloth, her pink light flickering in soft rhythm. Tia had one tiny wing draped over Luke, who, being the biggest of the 3, still floated protectively near the satchel's edge as if guarding his sisters even in sleep. Asia brushed a strand of blonde hair from her face and whispered fondly, "You 3 really are little angels." The plane jolted suddenly. The shift sent a tremor through the floor, knocking a few loose bolts against the metal walls. The 3 cherubs stirred instantly. Ikaros let out a small, startled cry, her light pulsing erratically. "Sure, it's all right," Asia cooed quickly, scooping the pink cherub into her palms. She began to rock her gently, humming a soft hymn under her breath. The melody was faint, cracked from exhaustion, but filled with love. Tia blinked groggily awake, chirping in confusion, while Luke darted up, spinning protectively around Asia as if ready to fight whatever had shaken the world. "It's okay, Luke," she reassured him softly, still cradling Ikaros. "We've just landed, I think." The cherubs quieted at her tone. Asia shifted carefully, trying to peer out through the small maintenance window beside her. Outside, she saw strips of bright light cutting across the glass runway lamps and the reflection of distant airport terminals. The sky beyond was gray, heavy with early morning clouds. "So we have landed," she murmured in relief. "Then we must have reached Japan." Her words trailed off, the echo of uncertainty slipping through her voice. Something felt strange. The markings on the runway were in English. The surroundings didn't look anything like Japanese architecture. Still, she didn't want to doubt. Hope was fragile, and she clung to it. She looked back at her little companions, who hovered near her hands again, now calm. "We made it," she said softly, smiling at them. "We're safe for now." The 3 responded with small, happy chirps. Asia exhaled, pressing her back against the crate, her exhaustion finally catching up to her. "Thank you truly. I don't know what I'd do without you." Outside, the plane slowed to a crawl. The hum of the engine softened into silence, replaced by the distant clatter of machinery and muffled voices in English. The soft hiss of hydraulics echoed through the cargo hold as the hatch began to open. Sunlight spilled in, sharp and blinding after hours of darkness. Asia flinched, pulling her hood tighter and shrinking behind a stack of crates. Voices followed, men shouting in another language, laughing as they worked, the sound of metal trolleys and heavy footsteps filling the space. "All right, let's unload these quick," one of them called out. Asia froze, her heart hammering. She pressed herself lower, whispering a prayer under her breath. "Please, please don't see me." As the first of the crates was lifted out, she took her chance. Quiet as a breath, she crawled along the floor, keeping her body as small as possible. The little cherubs hovered invisibly above her head, their soft light dimmed to the faintest flicker. Every sound, every scrape of her shoes, every shift of her cloak, felt deafening. She waited until one of the workers turned away, then darted behind a luggage cart. Another few seconds, another movement, until finally, trembling and breathless, she slipped through the narrow opening at the back of the hold and dropped lightly to the ground. She landed in a crouch, knees aching, and waited. No one shouted. No one noticed. For the first time in what felt like forever, luck was with her. She pulled her hood lower and began walking, blending into the flow of workers and passengers making their way toward the main terminal. The morning air was cool and smelled faintly of jet fuel and coffee. Her heart still raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic drew attention, she'd learned that much. The moment she stepped inside the main building, however, her calm started to crack. People bustled past her, but their faces, their voices, their accents, all wrong. They weren't Japanese. Their skin tones, hair colors, even the rhythm of their speech was completely different. Confusion flickered across her face. "This doesn't look like Japan," she whispered softly, clutching her satchel close while she had never been there personally but from her many memories. None of this looked like those dreams. Around her, signs hung from the ceiling. Baggage claim A, arrivals, customs. The lettering was in English. Even the announcements blaring through the speakers were unfamiliar. She looked down the corridor, trying to find something, anything, that said Tokyo or Japan. But instead, her eyes caught a large sign near the exit doors. "Welcome to John Wayne Airport." Asia blinked, rereading it several times. "John Wayne?" she murmured, tilting her head. "Who's that?" Tia, still invisible, chirped a curious note near her ear. "I don't know either," Asia whispered back, her voice trembling slightly. She tried to keep walking, pretending to belong like the rest, but her pace quickened as worry started to sink in. Maybe there was a mistake, maybe there was another airport with that name in Japan. She had to be wrong. But when she stepped outside and the bright Californian sunlight hit her, all her hopes fell apart. Instead of the crowded skyline of Tokyo, there were palm trees swaying gently in the wind, wide highways filled with unfamiliar cars, and a horizon that stretched out endlessly toward the ocean. The air was warm, dry, and salty. She stood there frozen, staring in disbelief. "This isn't Japan," she said softly. Her voice was barely a whisper, almost lost beneath the distant roar of planes taking off. Her mind raced as she turned to the first passerby. She saw a middle-aged man in a baseball cap carrying a cup of coffee. She tugged gently at his sleeve. "Excuse me," she asked in halting English, what country is this?" The man looked at her with mild confusion. You're in California, miss." "The United States." Asia's breath caught. "See California? The USA?" He nodded, already walking away. "Yeah. Welcome to America." She stood there, stunned, her lips trembling. Her legs felt weak, and she slowly sank to sit on a nearby bench, her satchel clutched tightly against her chest. The three cherubs peeked out one by one, tiny, concerned faces glowing faintly with soft light. Luke chirped a question. Asia forced a shaky smile, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "I think," she said quietly, voice breaking, "I took the wrong plane." The cherubs chirped sadly, their wings drooping in sympathy. Asia looked up at the clear Californian sky, its blue stretching forever. She wanted to cry, to scream, to laugh, but she wasn't sure which. "Issei," she whispered, her voice trembling like glass. "I'm sorry I was supposed to find you." She closed her eyes, her tears falling softly into her hands. The three cherubs huddled close, their tiny lights glowing like small, loyal stars. The air felt so dry and bright, so different from the damp chill of Rome. Asia walked slowly along the edge of the airport grounds, clutching her satchel tightly against her chest. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from exhaustion, but from the sinking realization that she was truly lost. California, she murmured softly to herself, the word foreign and strange on her tongue. A gentle chirp answered from her bag. She peeked down to see Icaros, the small pink cherub, poking her head out, blinking up at Asia with innocent, sleepy eyes. Asia smiled weakly, brushing her fingertips against Icaros's tiny head. I'm okay, don't worry, just a little lost. A few moments later, Tia and Luke floated out as well, their faint glow catching the sunlight. The trio of little cherubs hovered close, like tiny guardian lights, their wings flapping in soft, rhythmic patterns that almost sounded like a comforting hum. I'm sorry, Asia whispered, I didn't mean for us to end up here. Luke chirped something that made Tia giggle and spin around him, and despite her worry, Asia found herself smiling again. You're right, maybe we can still fix this. The group wandered down the wide streets outside the airport. The sounds of cars, distant conversations, and airplane engines filled the air. The streets here were strange, huge roads, sprawling parking lots, tall palm trees swaying gently in the wind. Everything felt very open. Asia tried to stay calm, even as she passed sign after sign written entirely in English. Rental cars, parking, departures, welcome center. She wished she could read them all easily. Her English wasn't bad, but she still struggled with the accents and the flood of new words. Her current plan was simple: find another airport, one with flights heading west, back across the ocean. But the longer she walked, the clearer it became that she had no idea where she was going. She sighed softly. Maybe I can return and sneak onto another plane. Luke, ever the little leader, chirped sharply as if scolding her. I know, she said, smiling faintly. But if none of the planes go to Japan, I'll have to find one that does, right? Tia zipped ahead, her golden glow brightening as she pointed toward a small row of buildings in the distance. From where they stood, Asia could make out a bus stop and a few people waiting there. That's a good idea, Tia, Asia said softly. Maybe they can help me find where to go next. When they reached the stop, Asia sat quietly on the bench, keeping her bag close while the cherubs hid inside it once more. Cars passed by, their loud engines startling her at first. The people here seemed relaxed, unconcerned, a man reading a newspaper, a woman drinking coffee, a group of students chatting and laughing. No one gave her a second glance. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a hunted fugitive. She lowered her hood, letting the sunlight touch her hair. The warmth felt heavenly. A little sigh escaped her lips. So this is what it's like to be free. After a short wait, a bus arrived with a hiss of air brakes. The driver opened the door and greeted her cheerfully, though she barely understood the fast words. She nodded politely, paid with the few crumpled bills that Tia had found, and took a seat near the back. The ride was smooth but disorienting, wide highways stretching endlessly between glittering billboards, beaches, and hills. Asia pressed her hand to the window, watching the world rush by. Her thoughts drifted to Issei. He'd probably know exactly what to do. He'd probably smile and say, "Don't worry, Asia-chan, I'll handle it." She smiled faintly at the thought. California, USA evening. The late afternoon sun hung low over the Californian skyline, painting the buildings and palm trees in soft gold. Asia Argento walked quietly along the sidewalk in a quiet suburban street, her boots scuffing against the pavement, her small frame carrying exhaustion but determination. The faint sound of waves in the distance mixed with the hum of passing cars. She clutched her satchel tightly, her hood now lowered. There was no reason to hide her face anymore. After stepping off the bus hours ago, she had wandered aimlessly, hoping to find a church, a shelter, or at least a kind soul who would let her rest for the night. But every street seemed to lead to another, unfamiliar one. The signs were in English, the buildings strange, and everything felt too large. The road curved gently ahead, lined with palm trees and small houses with bright gardens and parked cars. Families were out for walks, children rode bicycles, and laughter echoed faintly from a nearby park. Asia adjusted the strap of her worn satchel and looked up, her golden hair catching the last of the sun. Floating above her, the three little cherubs twirled and darted through the warm air like living sparks of light. Their tiny wings shimmered, leaving behind faint motes of radiance as they played around their mother. Tia zipped ahead to inspect a streetlight turning on. Luke hovered protectively by Asia's shoulder, and Icaros spun gently in the air, giggling in soft chiming tones that only Asia could understand. Asia giggled softly, her voice light for the first time that day. Be careful, you three, you'll make people stare if you glow too much. You three really do love flying, don't you? Luke chirped proudly in response, puffing up his tiny blue wings. Ikaros twirled through the air and landed on Asia's head, her pink light flickering playfully, while Tia floated close to her cheek and tugged lightly on a strand of her hair. All right, Asia said between quiet laughter. Let's focus, okay? We still need to find somewhere to rest for the night. Her tone softened as she looked around. The streets were wide and unfamiliar, and though the people here seemed kind, she knew she couldn't simply ask for shelter. The few coins she had left wouldn't be enough for a motel, she sighed. Maybe a church if there's one nearby, they might let us stay. But then it hit her. A sharp pain like a jolt of lightning flashed through her head. The world around her seemed to pause. Asia gasped, staggering slightly as her vision went white. Her body trembled, and for a heartbeat, everything around her vanished. In its place came fire. She saw it as clear as daylight, a sudden explosion, buildings shattering, flames tearing through the street, a shockwave rushing outward. She could almost feel the heat on her skin, and hear the screams that followed. The sound was deafening, the blast wave tearing through the air. Screams echoed. A shock of destruction rippled through her senses, making her clutch her chest. And just as suddenly as it came, the vision ended. Asia blinked, breathing hard. The world returned, the quiet streets, the evening sky, the sound of traffic in the distance. Her legs felt weak. An explosion? She whispered, glancing around in confusion. But where? Her emerald eyes scanned the area. Everything seemed normal, people walking their dogs, a couple chatting at a cafe table, cars driving by without a care. But her heart wouldn't stop pounding. She knew these visions too well. Every time they came, they were true. Always. The cherubs, sensing her fear, circled her worriedly. Luke's soft blue glow pulsed in agitation, while Tia's golden light flickered faster than usual. Asia took a deep breath, pressing a trembling hand over her cross pendant. It's okay, I'm okay, she whispered, trying to steady herself. Maybe it hasn't happened yet. She kept walking, her pace quickening now, her eyes scanning every street corner, every alley. Darting between alleyways and rooftops, trying to find the source of the unseen danger. Please, she whispered, show me what to do, how to stop it. Her footsteps echoed on the sidewalk. The further she went, the quieter the world became. The laughter faded. The noise of cars vanished. Even the air felt different. She slowed to a stop. The world around her began to grow quieter, fewer people, fewer cars, until the sounds of civilization seemed to fade entirely. A strange unease prickled at the back of her neck. She slowed, realizing the air itself felt heavier. The sunlight dimmed unnaturally, as though a veil had been pulled over the world. The wind no longer touched her face. The hum of distant conversation was gone, and then she felt it, a faint ripple that passed through her body like a cold current. Her breath caught. A barrier? She whispered. It's separating this place from the world outside. She turned, glancing behind her. The street she'd come from shimmered faintly, distorted like heat rising from asphalt. The moment she'd stepped forward, something had changed. Luke chirped sharply in alarm, hovering closer to her. Asia looked around. The air ahead shimmered faintly, colors bleeding and folding like glass underwater. She recognized this feeling. Yes, Asia said softly, it means something supernatural is happening here. Her steps grew cautious. I must have crossed into a boundary field, she murmured, gripping her satchel tightly. Her voice trembled as she whispered to herself, then the explosion, it's going to happen here. The cherubs floated closer, their tiny wings glowing brighter as they formed a small protective circle around her. Ikaros chirped softly, frightened but brave. Asia gave them a small, reassuring smile. It's all right. We'll be careful, she said softly. But if something bad is going to happen, we can't just ignore it. Her gaze turned forward to the empty street ahead. She could feel it now, a pressure, faint but building. Something was about to happen. Something powerful. Asia whispered a quiet prayer under her breath, her fingers brushing the cross at her neck. Lord, please guide us. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped further into the strange silence, unaware that her every step was carrying her deeper into a battlefield. The air grew colder with every step. As Asia walked through the barrier, it felt like walking through water. The air rippled around her, her breath catching as a wave of pressure rolled over her skin, causing her body to tingle. She turned, but the street she'd come from was gone. In its place was a distorted mirage, a hazy outline of a normal city street that seemed impossibly far away. The three cherubs hovered close, their glows dimmed instinctively, like candle flames in a storm. Luke chirped softly, uneasy, but then the silence was broken. A boom echoed in the distance. Then another. Asia flinched, clutching her brown boots as the ground beneath her trembled. Dust rained from the rooftops nearby. Her eyes widened as the sky ahead flared with light, a streak of blue energy cutting through the clouds. She ran toward it. The world changed as she ran. Buildings were destroyed, twisted and burned as many were covered in flames. The air shimmered with unstable mana, humming with energy that stung her skin, and then she saw it. Beyond the rows of abandoned cars and cracked asphalt, a war was raging. At the far end of the shattered street, shapes began to emerge from the drifting smoke, rows of armored men and women moving in tight formation. Their armor gleamed faintly beneath the flickering streetlights, marked with luminous sigils that pulsed like living veins of light. They moved with practiced precision, a military rhythm that spoke of discipline born from countless drills and secret wars. Government soldiers and agents, clad in enchanted tactical gear and reinforced coats lined with silver thread, raised their weapons in unison. Each rifle bore glowing seals etched along the barrel, the runes humming softly with sanctified energy. Their armor carried a single emblem. The USARD, United States Special Anomalous Response Division, the American government's secret branch for supernatural threats. Behind them came the mages. Dozens of them, each wearing modernized robes woven with arcane fiber, their hands alive with radiant sigils. Some bore corporate insignias, others wore the metallic collars of government contractors. Their movements were sharp and fluid, weaving complex geometric circles of energy in the air before releasing bursts of light that cracked like gunfire. Bolts of condensed mana streaked across the battlefield, tearing through air and concrete alike. The resulting explosions scattered sparks and debris like glowing embers in a storm. And then the air changed. Asia felt it immediately, even from her hidden vantage point behind a collapsed wall. The aura that rolled across the battlefield wasn't magical, it was something deeper. Her breath hitched. Sacred gears. Among the soldiers, several figures stood out, men and women whose presence alone distorted the atmosphere. Their eyes burned with arrogance and power, their silhouettes radiated power that even her divine senses could barely define. Sacred gear holders. Each one unique and terrifying. One agent soared above the battlefield on wings of steel, his feathers gleaming like blades as he cut through the smoke, rifle slung under one arm. Another raised a hand, and the gravity around him bent, dragging broken vehicles and metal beams alike into a crushing implosion as they were slammed into the ground. A third moved through the chaos wreathed in light, his every step leaving behind blinding trails of light as he struck with precision, clinical and merciless. Asia's stomach nodded. Even at this distance, she could feel their overwhelming strength. Explosions erupted in waves, each one flashing white-blue with the energy of sanctified gunfire and spellfire colliding. Mages fired lances of arcane plasma that carved molten scars across the asphalt. Federal agents moved like a machine, covering angles, sweeping corners, shouting tactical codes between bursts of fire. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, burnt metal, and scorched earth. Asia stumbled behind a toppled street sign, covering her ears as a deafening blast shook the ground. What is this?" she whispered. Across the battlefield, their enemies stood defiant, a small group of Native American warriors, shamans and mystics, their clothes and markings glowing with runes of nature and spirit. Some wore feathered cloaks that flared with ethereal light, while others were surrounded by an aura of animal spirits, wolves, hawks, and bears made of living mana. Beside them fought creatures that looked as though they had stepped straight out of myth. A coyote spirit, its body made of shifting sand and starlight, weaving between enemies with supernatural grace. A stone-skinned giant, towering above the others, roaring as glyphs along his arms cracked and glowed with magma-like light, and eagles of pure flame, circling overhead, their wings scattering embers like sparks of creation. But they were losing badly. Their barriers cracked under the relentless assault of the government's mages. Every time one of their summoned beasts lunged forward, it was torn apart by a barrage of magical bullets or nullifying sigils. The humans with guns and spells had them surrounded. Their chants were synchronized and precise. Bullets laced with silver and enchanted mercury ripped through barriers of wind and stone. Asia's heart clenched as she saw a young woman fall, a shaman clutching a staff carved with eagle motifs. She shouted something in a language she didn't understand before collapsing, her spirit companion vanishing in a burst of light. One by one, the native warriors fell with their spirit companions flickering like dying candles. The cherubs clung close to her shoulders now, trembling. Luke's blue glow dimmed, while Ikaros let out a sorrowful chirp. Asia whispered, "They're fighting humans?" "Why?" she murmured, her voice shaking. "Why are they fighting?" Asia's gaze drifted to the far side of the battlefield. There, upon a hill of shattered concrete and uprooted trees, stood a small band of native sacred gear users. Their silhouettes were framed by the burning horizon, the last defenders of the old world standing against the new. They were young, hardly older than Asia herself. Their faces were streaked with blood and soot, but their eyes burned with unyielding fire. Each one held a different totem and their weapons alive with spiritual essence. One young man raised a spear crackling with lightning, its tip dancing with stormlight that smelled faintly of ozone and rain. Another stood behind him, antlers of pure energy forming from his head like a living crown, the glow pulsating with the rhythm of his heart. A girl with long black braids stood at their center, her lips moving in constant prayer. Her voice rose above the carnage, soft but unwavering, a haunting melody that wove through the screams and explosions. The song wasn't just words. It was a barrier. A spell of protection born from love and fear, but they were surrounded. The ushered agents advanced in a wide semicircle, their enchanted armor glinting in the unnatural light. Shields of blue energy shimmered before them, deflecting stray bolts of magic. Drones floated overhead, metallic eyes that hummed with quiet menace as they locked on to targets. Their guns glowed faintly along their runes, humming with divine resonance. "Containment field ready!" shouted the lead agent, his voice amplified by a calm spell. He raised his hand, his tone cold and resolute. "No survivors. Eliminate the resistance." But before anyone could act, a lone figure stepped forward from among the defenders. A young man in shamanic garb, his long black hair tied with feathers that fluttered in the heat of the fires. His bare chest was painted with swirling sigils of red and white, glowing faintly as though alive. He was unarmed, save for the gleaming bracer on his right arm. It pulsed red and gold, runes shifting across its surface. The very air around it vibrated, another sacred gear. His expression was calm, even as his breathing quickened. His gaze met the approaching army, filled with both courage and the sorrow of someone who already knew how this would end. "I won't let you take our land and freedom!" he shouted. His voice carried through the smoke and fire, strong and defiant. Even Asia, hiding far behind the wreckage, felt the words resonate in her heart. He raised his arms skyward. The bracer flared brilliantly, bathing the hilltop in blinding light. Then the earth moved. From beneath the cracked asphalt, roots exploded upward, thick and powerful as iron beams. They twisted violently, tearing apart the road, wrapping around drones, smashing through energy barriers. The air filled with the sound of splintering earth and shattering glass as the roots grew, thickening into wooden spears. The mages shouted in panic, desperately reinforcing their shields. The roots surged forward. And the agents retaliated. "Fire!" A salvo of magical artillery screamed through the air, dozens of glowing orbs leaving trails of light behind them. They collided with the roots mid-flight, and the world erupted in white fire. The explosion was deafening, a thunderous roar that swallowed the battlefield whole. Asia screamed and ducked behind an overturned car as the shockwave rushed past her, blowing dust and sparks through the air. The cherubs darted around her, glowing brighter in panic. When the blast faded, the shamanic warrior was on his knees, blood dripping from his mouth, his bracer cracked and flickering. Smoke and ash filled the air, the smell of ozone and blood mixing into something metallic and suffocating. The once quiet suburban valley had become a battlefield of shattered earth and burning cars, littered with craters, burning sigils, and the broken bodies of mages. The young shaman she had seen earlier was still on his knees, clutching his cracked bracer, his face pale with exhaustion. Around him, several wounded lay motionless, their magic spent. The native mages and their sacred gear holders lay scattered on the cracked earth. Some still groaned, reaching weakly for the fallen, while others lay motionless, their spirit companions fading into thin air. Their defeat was certain. Asia stood frozen behind a half-shattered car, her small hands trembling as she clutched her cross. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as she whispered, "They're going to kill them all." Her eyes darted toward the government soldiers advancing through the smoke. Their boots crunched over glass and soil. Rifles lined with glowing enchantments clicked as they reloaded. The mages behind them prepared containment circles, their voices echoing coldly in rhythmic chants. The government forces closed in with mechanical precision, their rifles glowing with anti-spirit wards. Behind them, a unit of corporate mages adjusted their gauntlets, chanting synchronized incantations. The leader raised his arm. "Containment team, prepare for elimination." No witnesses. Asia's heart froze and her breath hitched. She knew she couldn't stay hidden. If she did nothing, more innocent people would die. She could already feel twilight healing burning faintly in her chest, begging to be used. She took one trembling step forward. But then the world erupted. Elsewhere, from the tree line beyond a shattered highway came a sound, deep, feral and ancient. It began as a distant rumble, a low growl that rolled through the trees like thunder crawling across the earth. The vibration carried through the soil, rattling bullet casings and shivering through the metal of overturned cars. Then, one by one, the howls began. A chorus of primal voices, some high and haunting, others guttural and furious, answered from the darkness. It was not the cry of beasts. Every gunman on the line froze. "Contact from the north sector!" One of the agents shouted, panic slicing through his voice. "Multiple unidentified entities." He never finished. A black blur erupted from the tree line, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. It hit him like a cannonball, sending his armored body flying into the side of a burning vehicle with a metallic shriek. And then, from the shadows, they came. Figures moved through the smoke, monstrous silhouettes, their eyes burning with anger. Claws flashed like silver under the firelight. The first wave tore through the soldiers' formation. Armor split like tin beneath their strength. Enchanted bullets ricocheted off thick hides as spells exploded harmlessly against natural wards. "Open fire!" someone screamed. But the order came too late. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting the night in staccato bursts. Bullets hissed through the air, but the creatures were too fast as streaks of motion left only blood and torn fabric behind. One of the soldiers spun, trying to chant a binding incantation, only for something appeared before him, face pale and beautiful, with eyes glowing crimson. Its clawed hand pierced through his chest in one smooth, effortless motion. The soldier fell. Another creature, the size of a car, crashed through a concrete barrier, roaring, its fur bristling with shards of silver light where the bullets failed to pierce through. It swung a broken vehicle door like a weapon, sending 3 more agents scattering. A cold wind swept through the carnage, as towering, skeletal things with hollow glowing eyes and long, bony fingers that left trails of frost in the air. Their screeches were like grinding metal, their touch turning the ground white with ice. Spells burst in response, lighting up the field in colors of red, gold, and blue, spells clashing, seals breaking, sigils flaring as battle mages fought to contain the surge. Then the ground shook. From the rear ranks of the horde, something massive emerged, a shape of fur and shadow, nearly 3 meters tall. Its roar shattered glass and silenced even the others for an instant. Its eyes gleamed gold beneath its matted hair, its fists glowing faintly with residual nature energy, with raw power that rippled through the barrier itself. When it charged, the earth seemed to bend beneath it. The human forces broke formation. Mages scrambled to reform shields. The night devolved into utter chaos, bullets, claws, spells, and roars blending into a single, unending storm of violence and fire. The once clear highway became a blur of destruction. Every flash of light revealed something worse, another creature joining the fray, another soldier falling. From the rooftops, dark shapes dropped into the smoke. A chorus of inhuman roars and snarls tore through the night. The leading agent shouted, "Contact! New signatures incoming from the north." But it was too late. The first of the attackers hit the ground like thunder, tall, fur-covered shapes that moved with frightening speed and strength. Their eyes glowed red, their claws slicing through the air with terrifying precision. Gunfire filled the night. The agents spun around, firing into the shadows, but the enemy was everywhere. Asia ducked instinctively as a soldier was sent flying over her hiding spot, his armor crushed like paper. When she looked up again, she saw what the agents were facing. They weren't demons. They were monsters. Vampires moved first, pale, fast, and elegant, their eyes burning crimson as they blurred through the lines, tearing through mages with movements too quick to follow. Their clothes were tattered, modern but regal, a blend of nobility and feral instinct. Werewolves followed, their form massive, hulking figures with fur bristling silver under the moonlight. They leaped across barricades, rending weapons in half, their snarls echoing with centuries of hatred. From the darkness of the forested edge came the chilling shrieks of wendigos, twisted, skeletal beasts with elongated limbs and hollow eyes that glowed faint blue. Their movements were jerky, unnatural yet swift, and towering above them all were Bigfoots, or what the soldiers called Sasquatches. Their bodies were colossal, covered in coarse brown fur, their eyes intelligent yet wild. They moved with an almost human coordination, their sheer strength ripping through armored vehicles and magical barriers alike. The air filled with chaos, gunfire, roars, and the screams of the wounded. Asia's hands shook as she tried to process what she was seeing. Monsters? But why are they? She stared in shock from her hiding place. What is happening? Luke chirped rapidly from her satchel, his glow flaring as if warning her to stay hidden. Her question was cut off as a vampire woman, her pale face smeared with blood, darted past her, dragging one of the wounded shamans to safety. Some of the monsters, particularly the Bigfoots and a few of the werewolves, weren't attacking the natives. They were protecting them, dragging the injured shamans out of the crossfire, roaring to clear paths through the confusion. The realization struck her like lightning. They're helping them? Werewolves covered retreating mages, Bigfoots lifted fallen warriors with their massive hands, and vampires shielded them with barriers of dark magic. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't the villains here. The battle intensified. The government mages regrouped, chanting counter-incantations. One of the sacred gear holders, a man wielding a crimson blade that hummed with divine frequency, cleaved through a werewolf, his armor glowing with magic. But the tide had turned. The sudden intervention had shattered the agent's formation. Within minutes, the monsters began pulling back, their mission seemingly complete, rescuing what remained of the native fighters. Asia sighed in relief. It's ending. Asia stepped out from behind the wreckage, her heart pounding, trying to see more. Her cherubs, Luke, Tia, and Ikaros fluttered close, their soft glows cutting faintly through the smoke. We have to help them, Asia whispered. They're saving the others. But before she could take another step, a massive explosion erupted nearby, throwing her off her feet. She landed hard, the air knocked out of her lungs. Dazed, she tried to get up, her vision spinning. The monsters were retreating now, leading the natives into the nearby forest. But one of the Bigfoots, suddenly stopped. He turned his massive head toward Asia. For a moment, the world seemed to still. Their eyes met. Asia froze. She didn't sense hostility, only a look of something similar resembling curiosity. The creature tilted his head slightly, letting out a low, rumbling sound that wasn't quite a growl. Asia whispered nervously, "Oh no." Then the Bigfoot moved, impossibly fast for his size. Towering above her was one of the Bigfoots, its fur matted with dirt and blood, its massive frame blotting out the moonlight. It looked down at her with intelligent, curious eyes that shimmered faintly gold. Asia's breath caught in her throat. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Before she could react, his enormous hand closed around her waist, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. Asia yelped in shock, her small hands grabbing at his fur. Wait! What are you doing?" The Sasquatch didn't answer, only grunted something guttural and unintelligible. His eyes glowed faint gold for a moment, almost as if enchanted by something unseen. The Bigfoot held her with alarming gentleness, tucking her under one massive arm like a child. Yeah. Wait. I'm not. Her words turned into a startled squeak as the creature bounded away with long, powerful strides, vanishing into the smoke and trees. Luke! Tia! Ikaros! She cried, reaching toward the satchel still hanging from her shoulder. The three cherubs burst out in a flash of light, chirping furiously, wings beating fast as they chased after the fleeing beast. Luke shouted a defiant "Pai!" That echoed like a tiny war cry. Saturday morning, Hayada residence. Issei Hayada stood in front of the mirror of the bathroom, his reflection staring back at him with equal parts excitement and panic. He tugged at the collar of his blue shirt for what must have been the 10th time, trying to make it sit right. All right, I see, you got this, he muttered to himself, voice shaky. Just a normal first date with a stunning, elegant, completely out of your league girl who might think you're a dork. He leaned closer to the mirror and sighed. His brown hair was the same chaotic mess as always, no matter how much he tried to flatten it. Yeah, no hope there. You're a lost cause, buddy. He gave himself a weak grin anyway. He straightened his shirt again, checked his breath, then stepped back and looked himself over. Not perfect, but presentable. Good enough for her to not run away screaming, he thought nervously. With a deep breath, he grabbed his phone and wallet from the counter and headed downstairs. In the kitchen, the familiar smell of breakfast greeted him. His mom, Miki Hayadu, stood by the stove flipping pancakes, while his dad, Gora Hayadu, sat at the table reading the paper. Both of them looked up as he appeared in the doorway. Mickey's face immediately brightened. Oh, there's my handsome young man. You look so grown up, Issei. He groaned, rubbing the back of his neck, cheeks reddening. Gora peeked over the newspaper, smirking. Big day, huh, son? Going to meet that girl you've been rambling about every day this week? Issei froze mid-step. I don't ramble. Both parents exchanged a knowing look. You totally do, Mickey teased. Her name's Melusine, right? You keep saying she's beautiful, polite, and what was the word you used? Mysteriously graceful. Issei buried his face in his hands. Why do you remember that? Because it was cute, she said with a laugh. Gora chuckled, folding his newspaper. Well, your mom's right. You've been talking about this girl nonstop. It's good to see you this excited. He leaned back in his chair, eyes softening. Make sure to be yourself out there, alright? That's what'll win her over, not trying too hard. Issei nodded, smiling nervously. Yeah, I'll try. Mickey stepped closer, fixing his collar with motherly precision. You don't need to try to be anyone else, honey. You're sweet, funny, and honest. If she can't see that, then it's her loss. He laughed awkwardly. Thanks, Mom, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. As he slipped on his shoes by the door, both of them stood behind him. Good luck, Issei, Mickey called out. And don't forget to bring her by one of these days. We'd love to meet her, Gora nodded. Yeah. Don't keep her a mystery forever, kid. Issei turned, smiling sheepishly. I'll try to arrange that soon. If the date goes well, maybe she'll actually want to meet my parents. Smart move, Gora said with a wink. Issei laughed, his nerves easing just a little. Alright, I'll see you later. Wish me luck. Luck. Both of them chorused. As he stepped outside, the cool spring air hit his face. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and his heart was racing faster than ever. He glanced down at his phone. A message from Melusine had just come in. Good morning, Issei. I'm already at the park entrance. Don't be late. Ah crap, she's already there. He yelped, quickly shoving his phone into his pocket as he ran down the street. Neighbors turned to look at the rushing teenager in confusion, but Issei didn't care. Today wasn't just another Saturday. Today was his first real date with Melusine Dulac. Park. The morning air in was crisp, touched with the faint scent of blooming cherry blossoms. Sunlight filtered gently through the trees, scattering soft petals across the winding paths of the park. And at the park's entrance, standing near the old fountain, was Melusine Dulac. She stood out like a painting come to life, Her white short dress fluttered lightly in the breeze, trimmed with lace at the hem that caught the sunlight with every subtle movement. A wide-brimmed hat framed her long silver hair, which cascaded down her back. A delicate ribbon tied beneath her chin completed the image, simple, yet breathtaking. She looked poised and serene, her golden eyes scanning the path ahead, though the faint tapping of her finger against her handbag betrayed a hint of impatience. Okay, you can do this, Issei muttered as he jogged the last few meters toward the gate. Don't trip, don't stutter, you're late. Her voice was cool and precise, cutting clean through his internal monologue. Issei froze mid-step, panting slightly as he straightened his jacket. And Melusine. You look. He stopped, blinking rapidly. The words refused to form. She was dazzling, and for a full 5 seconds, his brain flat-lined. Melusine arched a delicate eyebrow. I look like an angel who just escaped from a luxury fashion magazine. He blurted out before realizing what he'd said. A faint flush crept up her cheeks, though she quickly averted her gaze, hiding the small smile that tugged at her lips. Your choice of words is unrefined, but appreciated. Sorry. Issei rubbed the back of his neck, grinning nervously. You just look amazing, that's all. She gave a soft exhale that might have been a sigh, or maybe a laugh. I suppose that will suffice. Come, the weather won't stay pleasant forever. They began walking down the park's main path. The gentle sound of the fountain and the distant chatter of families surrounded them, though Issei could hardly focus on anything but the woman walking beside him. Melusine's every step carried quiet grace. Every so often, she'd adjust her hat with a slightly awkward tug or glance at the ground with the faintest pout when her heel caught a stray pebble. Issei noticed, smiling faintly. You know, for someone who looks like she just walked out of a fairy tale, you're surprisingly normal sometimes. Her eyes flicked toward him. Normal? He laughed softly, hands in his pockets. Yeah. You trip over things, frown at getting dirty, get shy when someone compliments you. I do not get shy. But you do. She stopped walking, blinking as if processing his words. The faint pink coloring her cheeks betrayed her before she could speak. That was merely the sunlight reflecting off my face. Sure, Issei teased lightly. Must be some powerful sunlight. Her lips twitched, but she didn't look away. Instead, she tilted her chin up slightly, her tone calm but faintly playful. You're awfully bold for someone who was trembling from nervousness earlier. He froze. How'd you? I could hear your heart beating from the moment you arrived, she said matter-of-factly. Then, seeing his stunned expression, she smirked, a small, rare expression that completely disarmed him. I am not completely ordinary, you know. They continued walking, side by side. The awkward tension from earlier slowly melted into comfortable conversation. They talked about school, Melusine admitting that she found the curriculum basic but tolerable, while Issei admitted he found math a form of torture approved by demons. After leaving the park, the two walked side by side along Kua's bustling main street. The weekend crowd was lively, vendors calling out their specials, students laughing near the crosswalks, the faint aroma of roasted chestnuts and sweet crepes filling the air. Melusine Dulac, ever elegant and poised, drew attention wherever she went. Her light blue dress fluttered in the wind, her hat's ribbon trailing gracefully behind her. Yet her calm expression and refined presence made her seem untouchable, a princess walking among commoners. Meanwhile, Issei Hayato walked beside her with the nervous energy of a man simultaneously on a date and in the presence of divinity. He tried to keep his cool and failed within 2 minutes. Man, I forgot how packed it gets on Saturdays, he said, scratching the back of his head. Guess everyone wants to enjoy the day. Melusine nodded lightly. It is lively. Her eyes darted across the street, curious but cautious. She was clearly unused to crowds. Her posture stayed perfect, her hands folded neatly in front of her, but there was a faint stiffness in her shoulders. Too noisy? He asked. She hesitated, then exhaled softly. A little. I've never been fond of excess commotion. Issei grinned. Don't worry, I'll protect you from all the dangerous noise, Lady Melusine. She gave him a sideways glance, her lips twitching. That's not how sound works, Issei. I can still try. Her laugh, soft, unguarded and slipping out before she could stop it. They wandered toward the market street, where the air was rich with the smell of food. Colorful stalls lined the way, takoyaki, taiyaki, grilled skewers, and too many sweets for Issei to handle responsibly. The moment he saw them, his eyes sparkled. Oh man, look at all that! Melu, you have to try these! Before she could protest, he had already dragged her toward a taiyaki stand. The old vendor grinned. Young love that? One with custard, one with red bean? Yup. You heard the man, Melu, Issei said cheerfully, paying before she could even reach her purse. I see you didn't need to. He waved her off. Come on, it's fine. You can buy me dinner sometime if it makes you feel better. Her golden eyes narrowed ever so slightly. You assume I will agree to a second outing. Oh, so you're saying there will be one? Melusine blinked, caught in her own words, before quickly turning her head away, cheeks faintly pink. You're insufferable. Yeah, but I'm funny, right? Barely. They walked along the stalls eating in companionable silence. Melusine took a careful bite of her taiyaki, and her eyes widened slightly as the sweetness hit her tongue. It's pleasant, she admitted after a moment. Issei smiled proudly. I'm glad you're enjoying our food. They stopped near a small clothing shop, and Melusine slowed, drawn to the display window. Inside hung a row of dresses, modern, soft, colorful. A far cry from the formal clothing she was used to. Issei followed her gaze. Are you thinking of trying one? I might, she said softly. My wardrobe is somewhat outdated. Outdated? Nah. You make everything look good, he said without hesitation. Seriously, you could wear a potato sack and still turn heads. Her head whipped toward him, and he froze, realizing what he just said. Not that I'm saying you should wear one. It's a figure of speech, I swear. Her lips curved slowly into a smirk. You have a habit of putting your foot in your mouth. How charming! Ah ha ha ha, please don't be mean to me. She chuckled, genuinely amused now. Relax. I'm not that cruel. He exhaled dramatically, slumping in mock relief. Thank goodness. I'd hate for my first date to end because of my mouth. Your first date? He blinked. Yeah? Why? For a moment, she said nothing, only studied him with unreadable eyes. Then her expression softened. I see. The two then continue on their date. That's the end here. Thanks for listening.